Chapter 1023. The Troll Emperor was dead, and the parasitic demon had left. However, the black battle armor made of 36 leaves remained, floating in the sky. Reaching out, Yi Chen tried to grab the black battle armor. Swish! The black battle armor was full of spirituality as it drilled downward, trying to return to the fiend ancestral tree. It's not up to you. Yi Chen was not like other kings. Even if the leaves of the fiend ancestral tree had spirituality, it would be hard for them to get rid of him. His figure flickered and appeared in front of the black battle armor. With a grabbing motion, the black battle armor landed in his hand. Like a snake that had been grabbed by its weak spot, the black battle armor quieted down. The will in Yi Chen's hand had isolated its connection with the fiend ancestral tree. This is indeed a treasure. Arranging a layer of immortal sword intent on the black battle armor, Yi Chen threw it into his storage ring. Shua! Turning into a beam of light, Yi Chen flew toward the true spirit continent. Above the ocean, the number of demon kings was still around 80. Facing 3 times the number of enemies, their losses were quite small, only a dozen or so. On the other hand, the losses of true spirit continent side were a bit bigger, also a dozen or so. Losing so many people while having far more people than the other side was indeed a bit dissatisfying. However, they couldn't be blamed for not risking their lives. Because of the black battle armor, the strength of these demon kings had skyrocketed. At the very least, their battle power had increased by 2 folds, and the most had increased by 3 to 4 folds. Being able to fight evenly was already not bad. When the difference in numbers wasn't too frightening, quality was more important than quantity. Your Elysium is going to lose this time. The essence, chi, and soul of Lord Troll Emperor have completely recovered. Adding the might of the demon's martial arts, it's enough to kill Yi Chen. On the side of the demon race, there was only one remaining 6-star demon king. His battle strength was originally at the peak of mid-6th star. However, after putting on the black battle armor, his strength reached the peak of 6th star. He could contend against Xu Jing, Murong Qingcheng, and the brown-robed old man by himself. His strength was rather frightening. Of course, these 3 were not ordinary people. They had suppressed him to the point where he couldn't even retaliate. Dream on. Murong Qingcheng's fist technique was sinister and overbearing, exploding upon contact. Coupled with her unparalleled mobility, her opponent couldn't catch her trajectory at all and could only passively take a beating. The Troll Emperor is just a stepping stone for junior brother Yi. Xu Jing's dragon body became dozens of meters long, and her dragon claws were indestructible. The opponent's protective magic was shattered by her dragon claws, unable to maintain its integrity. Just you wait and see. The demon king snorted coldly. About half a cup of tea's time later, a streak of light flew over from the 3rd heaven, which couldn't close due to the battle between the undying tree and the abyssal ancestral tree. Who is it? The 4 of them looked over. Impossible. The 6-star devil's face was extremely pale. Just a moment ago, he was full of confidence, but now, he was as dejected as a dead man. Who? Murong Qingcheng and Xu Jing heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. Although they were extremely confident in Yi Chen, this kind of confidence was almost blind. However, they were very clear about the Troll Emperor's strength. If Yi Chen wanted to kill him, it wouldn't be as difficult as ascending to the heavens, but it wouldn't be easy either. Therefore, they could only completely sigh of relief now. What a terrifying young man. The old man in brown was amazed. He never thought that there would be such an amazing person in this era. Compared to him, most of the titled monarchs from ancient times would pale in comparison. The other demon kings also saw Yi Chen, but they didn't see Lord Troll Emperor. An intense uneasiness rose in their hearts, and they couldn't help but ask, Yi Chen, where is my Lord Troll Emperor? Floating in the air, Yi Chen looked down at the demon kings. The boundless starry sky will be his final resting place. Impossible. How could you kill Lord Troll Emperor? You must have tricked us and shaken off Lord Troll Emperor, then came to deceive us. Everyone, don't believe him. He wants to use this to attack us and make us lose our fighting spirit. Kill for me, kill until the Troll Emperor returns. Some demon kings didn't believe Yi Chen's words and roared in anger. Truly foolish demons. Yi Chen shook his head, and his expression suddenly turned cold. Sure, his figure flashed, and Yi Chen flashed past a demon king. Fresh blood splashed 300 feet into the air. Whether you believe me or not, that's your business. I have no obligation to make you believe me. If you want to kill me, I'll accompany you. The 3 flowers above his head had already been dispersed by Yi Chen. Other than the Troll Emperor, no one was qualified to make him use the 3 flowers to borrow the Tao. Even so, his battle prowess was still as high as a 7-star. In the entire Elysium, there wasn't a second 7-star battle prowess. The sword light shuttled back and forth like threads, and demon kings fell one after another under Yi Chen's sword. Even if they had black battle armor and their strength had increased by several times, to Yi Chen, it was meaningless. Killing them was as easy as eating and drinking. 7-star against 6-star and 5-star. This wasn't just suppression, it was pure suppression. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the number of demon kings decreased from 80 to a dozen. Finally, they believed the truth that the Troll Emperor had fallen. To them, this was too cruel. All of them had lost their fighting spirit, and their eyes were lifeless. We'll go chase after those puppet warships. I'll leave them to you. Yi Chen said to everyone. Okay. The people of Elysium nodded. If they couldn't even deal with a dozen demon kings, they might as well find a block of tofu and kill themselves. Living would be a waste of heaven and earth energy. The ones chasing after the puppet warships were Yi Chen, Xu Jing, and Murong Qingcheng. They were the fastest. The demons only had about 300 puppet warships left. At this moment, they had already entered the starry sky and were flying toward a dead end. Their speed was so fast that not many could catch up. I'll go first. With a flap of her demonic wings, Murong Qingcheng's speed soared, and in the blink of an eye, she had shaken off Yi Chen and Xu Jing. That's not necessarily true. Xu Jing had already turned into a human, but after hearing Murong Qingcheng's words, she once again turned into a golden dragon. With a wave of her dragon tail, countless energy storms erupted in the starry sky, and even a small star was destroyed. As for Xu Jing herself, she had already turned into a majestic golden storm and chased after Murong Qingcheng. Now that he was the only one left, Yi Chen smiled bitterly. All right, let's see how fast I am. After entering the 3rd layer of life and death realm, Yi Chen's sword domain had already broken through to the 4th layer. At this moment, with the sword domain of the 4th layer fully activated, Yi Chen's speed soared. The huge sword domain seemed to have turned into an invisible propeller, continuously shortening the distance between him and the 2 in front of him. Hey! Murong Qingcheng and Xu Jing looked at Yi Chen. Yi Chen smiled. Don't look down on me. No matter how fast the puppet warships were, they couldn't be faster than the 3 of them. Most importantly, they needed to reach a certain speed before they could use space stones to travel through the starry sky. Soon, the 3 caught up to the puppet warships. The puppet warships seemed to have a soul power isolating array arranged with soul stones. Murong Qingcheng and Xu Jing's soul attacks couldn't kill the demons inside. Moreover, Yi Chen didn't have much soul power left, so he didn't use any soul attacks. However, this didn't matter. Flying to the center of the puppet warships, Yi Chen expanded his sword domain to the limit. The enormous sword pressure acted on the puppet warships, slowing them down until they finally stopped. Bang bang bang! The demons inside the puppet warships were still unwilling to give up. One light beam after another bombarded Yi Chen. Unfortunately, it was futile. Yi Chen casually swung his sword once or twice to deflect all the light beams. With Yi Chen holding the puppet warships in place, Xu Jing and Murong Qingcheng forcibly opened the doors and killed all the demons inside. Let's go back. Turning around, Yi Chen flew in the direction of True Spirit Continent. The 300 puppet warships bound to his sword domain didn't leave his side. On the ocean gazing, the situation was completely one-sided. It wasn't that Elysium's army was too powerful, surpassing the demon army, but that Life and Death Kings had joined the fray. Life and Death Kings slaughtering the demons was as easy as chopping melons and vegetables. There was no suspense at all, especially Dugu Ju. With a swing of his blade, the sky full of demons turned into a rain of blood. His hatred for the demons had almost reached the pinnacle. After scanning with his soul power, Yi Chen let out a sigh of relief. None of the people he valued in Fallen Dust Sword sect had died. However, this was within his expectations. After all, his sword intent Jin Yuan was incomparably powerful, enough to let them face any enemy. That demonic sword. There was a forbidden area in the ocean gazing, the place where Demon Emperor and the demon-cursed sword had fallen. Anyone who approached this area would immediately die for no reason. Even ordinary life and death kings couldn't bear it. Disregarding the powerful curse power, Yi Chen arrived beside the demon-cursed sword and grabbed it. Buzz! An extremely cold and gloomy power flowed through the sword and entered Yi Chen's body. Humph! Activating the 7th step Immortal sword intent, the cold and gloomy power was instantly shattered. This sword's quality is the same as my demon slaughtering sword, only a high-grade sword. However, there's a bloodstain on it. Yi Chen's sword forging arts had already reached an extremely profound level. He could tell with a single glance that there was nothing special about the demon-cursed sword. The only thing special about it was that there was a bloodstain on the sword's body. This bloodstain was extremely ancient and had been imprinted on the sword's body. It contained a curse power, turning the sword's source power into curse power. If Yi Chen couldn't contend against this curse power, his Jin Yuan would also turn into curse Jin Yuan and suffer a calamity. I wonder if I can disassemble this sword. Yi Chen wasn't interested in the demon-cursed sword. What he was interested in was the materials used to forge it. Putting away the demon-cursed sword, Yi Chen was about to destroy the demon-cursed demon emperor's body. Yi Chen, there are demonic energy stones inside the demon-cursed demon emperor's bones. They're useful to me, Murong Qingcheng suddenly said. Yi Chen frowned. If I'm not mistaken, his demonic energy stones are cursed. Don't worry. My dark demoness bloodline has a certain immunity to curse power, Murong Qingcheng explained. All right. Yi Chen faintly nodded. The demon-cursed demon emperor was a 7th-layer life and death demon emperor. His demonic energy stones were extraordinary. After absorbing its essence, Murong Qingcheng's demonic body would at least advance by 1 rank. Chapter 1024. The cursed demon emperor's appearance was too ugly. Even though he was dead, he still looked very disgusting. No one would look down on normal ugliness. After all, some things were innate. However, the cursed demon emperor's ugliness had been modified. In the entire Elysium, it would be impossible to find a human that was 1/10 as ugly as him. If one could be found, it would definitely be a miracle. Murong Qingcheng wasn't a woman who judged people by their appearance, but she didn't want to look at the cursed demon emperor for too long. Her exquisite fist shook the cursed demon emperor's body. Bang! The cursed demon emperor's body exploded and turned into ashes. With a gust of wind, the ashes dissipated, leaving behind a dozen black magical energy crystals. These magical energy crystals were different from the magical energy crystals obtained in the dimensional battlefield. The energy they contained was very terrifying, and there was a faint black halo on their surface. Master, you and I each get half. Murong Qingcheng pushed her hand forward, and half of the magical energy crystals flew in front of the Demon Flower Emperor. The Demon Flower Emperor shook his head and pushed the magical energy crystals back. He said, "It will help you more than it will help me. Moreover, I have also collected some magical energy crystals." The Demon Flower Emperor stretched out his right hand and opened it. There were 8 black magical energy crystals in his palm. These magical energy crystals were obtained from the skeletons of some demon kings that hadn't reached the blood rebirth realm. Unfortunately, most of the demon kings had been smashed to pieces, so there couldn't be any magical energy crystals left. "We've suffered heavy casualties in this battle." The one who spoke was the Spirit Pill King. The reason he was able to survive was mostly due to luck, and a small part was due to medicinal pills. Of course, he had also given many medicinal pills to the other kings, and their effects couldn't be underestimated. For example, some medicinal pills that could replenish qi and blood, some medicinal pills that could increase strength, and some medicinal pills that could increase defense. These were all very useful. Yi Chen said, This victory was the result of everyone working together. Although they are dead, their spirits are still there. I suggest that we build a king's graveyard. Only the kings that died for Elysium can be buried in the king's graveyard, so that the future generations will remember their contributions. This suggestion isn't bad. Xianhu nodded. Yeah, I agree as well. I don't think anyone would disagree. Thinking about the people who had died, everyone's heart sank. There were too many of them. Out of the 600 life and death realm warriors, only 200 were left. The underground race had joined later, but they had also lost 20 of them. Among them, some were already old, and some were just at the beginning of their lives. For example, Lu Xiaoyu, Beiming Hui, Xia Hozuan, and the other martial geniuses. Their deaths were a huge loss for Elysium. The dead are gone. The ones who survived should be even stronger. Yi Chen sighed. He glanced at Du Guju, Dantai Mingyu, Chu Zhongtian, Liu Wujian, Jiang Tian, Lan Sanmai, Yang Fengfeng, and the other martial geniuses who had survived. They were all martial geniuses of the same generation as him, and it was not easy for them to survive. As Yi Chen looked over, they looked over as well. There were all kinds of emotions in their eyes. Some were hidden sadness, some were reminiscing, and some were thinking. Right then, silence was better than words. Even Jiang Tian, who had some conflicts with Yi Chen, also looked over with a hint of apology in his eyes. After this battle, everyone had formed a friendship. This kind of friendship might not be that of friends, but it was definitely kind, just like a comrade in arms. It was not hard to imagine that for a long time in the future, Elysium would be very peaceful. Even if the treasures appeared, it would not make them kill each other. Enough people had died already, and they would rather give up on the treasures than waving their knives at their former comrade in arms. Although, fighting was the source of human evolution. The battle had already been decided, and there were only a few tens of thousands of demon army warriors left. However, there was still one big mystery that had yet to be revealed, which was the battle between the Undying Tree and the Demon Ancestral Tree. It would not be an exaggeration to say that if the Demonic Ancestor Tree won, all of their previous efforts would vanish like smoke in thin air. A single Demonic Ancestor Tree could kill all of them. An 8th layer life and death battle strength was not something that could be defeated with numbers. After all, it had already surpassed 10-star battle strength. It will take a long time for a winner to be decided. We will not be of much use here, so we should go check out the Skysword continent. Yi Chen said suddenly. Right. I almost forgot about it. Oh no, I actually forgot about this. Many people patted their heads, their faces full of vexation. Actually, they could not be blamed for forgetting about it. It was mainly because the battle with the demons had been too intense, and they had only won after several twists and turns. During that time, they had thought that there was no hope, but Yi Chen had turned the tide several times. Now that the battle was coming to an end, their nerves had relaxed, and they were not willing to think about anything else. Naturally, they had also thrown the matter of the Skysword continent to the back of their minds. There is no need for too many people to go. The demons have been eliminated by us, and the evil spirit race will not be able to make any big waves. This way, those who are willing to come can come, and those who are not can clean up the mess. It is not good for everyone to go, Yi Chen said. In the end, only 70 or 80 people went to the Skysword continent. It was not that the others did not want to go, but they felt that there was no need to go. In the entire Elysium, apart from the demon ancestral tree, which enemy could be Yi Chen's opponent? Moreover, those who went with Yi Chen were all peak experts. There was a huge teleportation array between the True Spirit continent and the Skysword continent. Through it, Yi Chen and the rest arrived at the Skysword continent in a short while. The Skysword continent was already on the verge of collapse. The army of Sea of Soul Realm and Astral Reaching Realm warriors had less than 100,000 left, and the kings were only left with 50. Defeated. We are really going to be defeated. Ancestors, I'm sorry, but we really can't stop them. But, you can rest assured. Even if there is only one soldier left, we will fight to the end. We will not retreat. If you want to occupy the Skysword continent, you'll have to do it over my dead body. Not to mention the others, even the Snowsword King and the Starsword King were ready to die. As for the 8 young demon lords, another one had died, and only the young elephant lord was left. They could not see any hope, nor could they see any turning point. The only thing left was their own obsession, and that was to kill as many evil spirits as possible. Yi Chen, it would be great if I could see how you fight before I die. Star Sword King couldn't help but think of Yi Chen. 4 sword artists, the sword Dao was their life's pursuit, and the one walking in front was undoubtedly their guide. Yi Chen was the strongest sword artist at the same stage since ancient times. Star Sword King wanted to see how he faced his predicament. Die. The 4 evil kings joined hands and attacked Star Sword King. Star Sword Monarch smiled bitterly. This time, he couldn't block it anymore. However, it was impossible for him to die without any resistance. He mustered all of his Zhen Yuan and was ready to die. Rip! Right at this moment, an arc-like sword light pierced through the space and swept past the bodies of the 4 evil kings. With a puff, the 4 evil kings didn't even have the time to scream before turning into nothingness. Star Sword King, long time no see. A familiar voice reverberated in the sky. It's Sword King Yi Chen. Yi Chen is here. And Dugu Ju, Dantai Mingyu, Chu Zhongtian. Why are they all here? Don't tell me True Spirit Continent has fallen. Impossible. Didn't you see their expressions? That's the expression of True Spirit Continent falling? Don't tell me. The kings of Sky Sword Continent discussed spiritedly, their emotions surging. Soon after, an ecstatic expression appeared on their faces. Since True Spirit Continent hadn't fallen, and the other side had rushed over, didn't it mean that they had defeated the demons and were here to rescue them? Yi Chen. Star Sword King looked as if he had seen a ghost. Snow Sword King Gojosian also looked over, his eyes filled with astonishment. Smiling, Yi Chen said to the people behind him, "You guys go and exterminate the evil spirit army. Leave this place to us." Yes. Of the 70 to 80 people who had followed, 50 went to help the Sky Sword Continent army. The remaining 20 were relatively stronger. Bang! 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 Without any hesitation, the 20 or so people led by Yi Chen charged toward the evil kings. In an instant, dozens of evil kings fell as if they were chopping vegetables. Yi Chen, True Spirit Continent? Star Sword King asked. Victory. Yi Chen killed batch after batch of evil kings and replied. Yi Chen, you're courting death. Emperor Yinsha rushed over. He didn't know how the demons were defeated, but the Troll Emperor was definitely not killed by Yi Chen. He reckoned that some special reason had led to the demon's defeat. Let me end your life. Emperor Yinsha's strength was very close to 7-star, and he seemed to be a bit stronger than the Lord of Fear. His hands slapped out repeatedly, and sinister palm winds swallowed the sky and corroded the sun, surging toward Yi Chen. Yi Chen, be careful. The few kings of the Sky Sword Continent who had just been saved by Yi Chen warned him. Not far away, Chu Zhongtian curled his lips. The one who should be careful should be Emperor Yinsha. Facing Emperor Yinsha, Yi Chen only slashed out once. Puff. In the next moment, Emperor Yinsha died, and not even his bones were left. Everyone was shocked, including the evil spirit race. Someone as powerful as Emperor Yinsha couldn't even block a single sword strike from Yi Chen. Were their eyes playing tricks on them? No. The remaining evil kings of the evil spirit race roared angrily. Unfortunately, what welcomed them was death. A casual strike from Xu Jing's dragon body could annihilate a group of evil kings. Murong Qingcheng was like a flickering black speck of light. Every time a black speck of light appeared, it would be accompanied by the fall of an evil king. Dugu Ju's despair blade arts were invincible, and anyone who touched them would die. Soon, the number of evil kings of the evil spirit race went from 300 to 100, then less than 100, less than 50, and less than 30. The time it took to finish a cup of tea didn't even exceed 10 minutes. Victory. Everyone cheered wildly. From despair to victory, it was difficult for outsiders to understand the changes in their minds. At least, the True Spirit Continent still had Yi Chen to give them hope. Many thanks. The Snow Sword of Gojosian said deeply to Yi Chen. There's no need to thank me. Everyone is fighting for Elysium. The demon-slaying sword returned to its sheath. The remaining evil kings of the evil spirit race were just 2 or 3 kittens. There was no need for him to make a move. Chapter 10:25. With the death of the numerous evil kings, the army of evil spirit race immediately became rootless duckweed. Although they looked like a sea of people, it was useless no matter how many they had. Without reaching life and death realm, they were all ants. Perhaps if they joined hands, they might be able to kill ordinary life and death kings, but they couldn't kill 4-star kings or 5-star kings, not to mention 6-star kings. Like harvesting rice, large swathes of evil spirits were instantly killed, and blood dyed the ground red. The so-called large swathes were thousands or even thousands of evil spirits. Who would have thought that true spirit continent could defeat the demons, who are several times more powerful than evil spirit race, and even come to save us? Didn't you see? Sword King Yi Chen is already inhumanly powerful. Even Emperor Yinsha couldn't block a casual sword strike from him. Killing the other evil kings is simply reaping lives. After this battle, Yi Chen's Sword King title will be passed down through the ages. At that time, people will only know Sword King Yi Chen, and not the ancient Sword King. In the eyes of the people of Sky Sword Continent, Yi Chen was already equivalent to an ancient titled monarch. Moreover, the most frightening thing was that Yi Chen was still so young, only 36 years old. Compared to a life and death king's lifespan of 1,000 years, this age was nothing. No, as long as one walked out of Elysium, their lifespan would reach 100,000 years. Finally, all the evil spirits were killed. Above the killing sword domain, corpses and bones covered the ground, and blood flowed everywhere. In many places, the blood had converged, forming a shallow lake. Standing amidst the mountains of corpses and seas of blood, many participants were crying tears of joy, but even more were cheering. Without staying for long, Yi Chen and the rest teleported back to True Spirit Continent. The Undying Tree and the demonic Ancestral Tree were still fighting. However, everyone could see that the Undying Tree had the absolute upper hand. After all, this was Elysium, the home ground of the Undying Tree. As an outsider, the demonic Ancestral Tree would be somewhat suppressed. The Undying Tree brandished its vines, and every time it lashed out, it would leave a deep mark on the demonic Ancestral Tree's trunk. This battle continued for 7 days and 7 nights. Finally, the demonic Ancestral Tree exhausted its demonic energy and died. In Elysium, although it could convert the Yuan Qi of the heaven and earth into its own demonic energy, it required a process and could not be converted immediately. In these 7 days and 7 nights, the Undying Tree had injured the demonic Ancestral Tree tens of millions of times, perhaps billions of times. Each time, it would take away some of its demonic energy, and in the end, no matter how much demonic energy the demonic Ancestral Tree had, it would not be enough. Although the demonic Ancestral Tree had died, its body had not been completely destroyed. If it stayed outside, there might be a chance for it to revive. The Undying Tree used its vines to wrap around the opponent and dragged it into the depths of the earth. In the end, both of them disappeared. At this point, the great calamity of the foreign races had come to an end. Elysium had once again defeated the foreign races. With the end of the great battle, there was naturally no need for people to stay in the ocean gazing. They brought the corpses of their relatives and friends, and those without corpses carried a handful of soil stained with their own blood. Each and every one of them had a sorrowful expression, filled with indescribable exhaustion. The Demon Flower Emperor was prepared to turn the ocean gazing into the new homeland of the demonic humans. If it were before, this would have been an impossible matter. The kings of True Spirit Continent would not sit and watch as demonic humans entered the continent in large numbers. But now, no one had any objections. In this great battle, the demonic humans had also contributed a lot. More than 70% of the demonic humans who had participated in the battle had died. So what if this small region of the ocean gazing was given to her? Nobody knew, but at least for a long time, the two races would be on friendly terms. Xu Jing returned to the Dragon God Celestial Palace to clean up the mess. The palace had also lost a lot of people, and many of the upper echelons had perished. Xu Jing needed to appoint new upper echelons to allow the palace to operate normally. Murong Qingcheng and her father returned to the Murong clan. After the great battle, Murong Jishirei had agreed to the Demon Flower Emperor's invitation, willing to merge the Murong clan with the Demon Flower Emperor's demonic humans. However, this was a matter for the future. Right now, there were still many things to do. Once everything was settled, he would discuss this matter with his clansmen. For a moment, the entire Elysium had quieted down. Everyone needed to deal with the aftermath, especially the big sects, who needed to appoint their upper echelons. Yi Chen's fallen dust sword sect could be said to have suffered the least losses. Of the 5,000 people who had participated in the battle, there were still around 3,000 survivors. This was mainly due to the effect of the sword formations. Dozens of sword snake formations, 7 to 8 sword dragon formations, and 2 Big Dipper 7-star sword formations had killed countless demons in their hands, which had greatly reduced the pressure on the other members of the fallen dust sword sect. Yi Chen didn't have any regrets in this battle. He had left a drop of sword intent Shen Yuan in the souls of the people he valued. However, his friends and relatives would also have their friends and relatives. Although Yi Chen had a lot of soul power, he couldn't take care of everything. Every drop of sword intent Shen Yuan consumed would take a long time to recover. During the great battle, if he couldn't maintain his perfect state, then he would be dead for sure. When battling with the Troll Emperor, which battle hadn't been filled with danger? After dealing with some matters as the sect leader, Yi Chen went into seclusion. He needed to recover his soul power. Killing the Troll Emperor had consumed 90% of his soul power, and he had only recovered less than 10%. Time flew, and in the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. It was almost the new year. Once the new year was over, Yi Chen would grow another year older, turning 37 years old. Snowflakes fluttered down, white and flawless, sparkling and translucent. On the dusk peak, the peak was covered with snow. Some small animals that liked winter came out to look for food, or to play in the snow. Creak. The palace gate in the middle of the snow slowly opened, and Yi Chen, who was still wearing a thin blue robe, walked out. He took a deep breath, breathing in the air that belonged to winter. It's almost the new year, right? In the past few years, Yi Chen had always been celebrating the new year. Before this, he basically wasn't at home. He was either adventuring outside, or he couldn't return home. The achievements he had now were piled up by loneliness and solitude. No one could casually achieve success, and he was no exception. Those small animals didn't seem to be afraid of Yi Chen. When Yi Chen walked near them, they only glanced at him and continued playing, leaving a string of small paw prints on the snow. Whoosh! A strong gust of wind blew past, and a large amount of snow suddenly fell from the top of the mountain. This was a sign of an avalanche. The next moment, the snow swooped down like a white wave. It looked like the frolicking animals and Yi Chen were about to be drowned by the snow. But the next moment, everything stopped. The dancing snowflakes froze in midair, and the tidal wave of snow froze on the slope. The wave tip was a beautiful arc. Neither too fast nor too slow, Yi Chen carried the small animals in his arms and walked toward the back. When he reached the snowy ground in front of the palace, everything returned to normal. The snowflakes continued to dance in the air, and the avalanche continued as usual. Muffled rumbling sounds could be heard, drowning everything there. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The small animals still didn't know what had happened. They only knew that they had inexplicably landed in the arms of the owner of the mountain. Rubbing their heads against Yi Chen's chest, they jumped down and surrounded Yi Chen. A faint smile appeared on Yi Chen's face. The 3 months of closed-door training had not only helped him recover his soul power, but had also allowed him to digest the comprehension he had gained during the great battle. For example, the Blood Rebirth Realm, the rank 5 Immortal sword intent contained in each of his cells, and the mysteries of the 4th level of the sword domain. These were all things that he couldn't grasp in a short time. He needed to digest them and understand them himself. Just now, he didn't need to take out his sword, but he could still create the effect of space freezing, which was a big gain. This was the result of fusing the essence of sword moves with his sword aura. In other words, as long as he used his sword aura, he could make the space freeze. Those who weren't proficient in the profound of space and were weak wouldn't even be qualified for him to draw his sword. He could completely make the opponent freeze there, or leave calmly, or go and finish them off. It was very simple. Apart from that, he could already fuse his sword aura with his sword domain. In this way, the sword domain would have the effect of freezing space, and it was even more powerful than pure sword aura. During the ranking battles of the Life and Death Palace, he had used his sword domain to freeze the young undying demon lord. Now that he had fused his sword aura with his sword domain, it was many times more powerful than before. The essence of sword moves had fused with his sword aura, and the sword aura had fused with his sword domain. Naturally, Yi Chen's momentary brilliance had also improved tremendously. Every time he used his sword, everything within 1,000 zhong would be within its effective range. The power of his sword moves had also doubled. Without using the 3 flowers borrowing the way, Yi Chen's pure battle strength had already reached the peak of 7-star. If the Troll Emperor were to come back to life, Yi Chen was 90% sure that he could kill him with his real strength, instead of using soul attacks to destroy his soul. Of course, since he had improved so much, the others wouldn't be too far behind. The calamity of the foreign races was a disaster, but it was also an opportunity. As long as they could survive, they would definitely improve. Those who had exhausted their potential might break through their limits and reach a higher level. Another half a month passed, and it was the new year. This year's new year was even livelier and more joyous than usual. This was because everyone knew that this new year was not easy to come by. It was exchanged with blood, so there was no reason not to cherish it. Sometimes, living was a kind of happiness. Living an ordinary life might be a better happiness. At least, they didn't need to care about other things, and could just live their own lives. After the new year, the atmosphere of Elysium changed. Of course, this kind of atmosphere only spread among life and death kings. They already knew that after the new year, Yi Chen would go to the path of death. Before that, he would probably go to a certain place. Emperor Scar Steely. Chapter 1026. Sky Marshal Region, Emperor Canyon. This was a holy land, as well as a forbidden area. Since ancient times, those who thought themselves to be unparalleled had entered, but the majority of them had left dejectedly. Being unparalleled in the current era also depended on the era. Not every era's unparalleled expert could leave their mark on the Emperor Scar Steely. Many people speculated that one had to have at least 7-star battle strength to leave a mark. As for whether it was true or not, no one had tested it yet. This was because in the current era, apart from Yi Chen, no one else had reached 7-star battle strength. After the new year, many kings had been waiting here. They had received news that Yi Chen would leave his mark on the Emperor Scar Steely either today or tomorrow. If he did not leave his mark, he might not be able to return for a short period of time. Once the demons and evil spirit race knew that their army had suffered a great defeat and that there was a character like Yi Chen, they would definitely dispatch even more powerful kings to guard the death path. At that time, it would be easy for Yi Chen to leave, but difficult for him to enter. They're here, they're really here. In the afternoon, under the blazing sun, 3 figures flew over. They were precisely Xu Jing, Murong Qingcheng, and Yi Chen. Junior brother Yi, today is the day your name will be passed down through the ages. Xu Jing looked at the dozens of kings guarding the canyon and turned her head to speak to Yi Chen. Yi Chen said, "If I go through the death path, I don't know if I'll be able to return for a short period of time. I've done what I should do, and it can be considered as fulfilling a part of my wish." Leaving a mark didn't mean that Yi Chen valued this honor. He was merely imitating the ancients. If he didn't leave a mark, he would be looking down on the ancients. Shua, Shua, Shua. The 5 landed near the Emperor Scar Steely. I wonder if this Yi Chen can leave a mark. He should be able to. According to the Emperor Scroll, the majority of titled monarchs were not as strong as Yi Chen. There's no reason why they could leave a mark while Yi Chen couldn't. Among the many kings, a white-haired king held a book in his left hand and a pen in his right. On the cover of the book were 3 large words, Imperial Book. Speaking of the Emperor Book, many people knew about it. This was a book used to record the deeds of those who could leave marks on the Emperor Scar Steely. This was just a copy. The true Emperor book could not be carried around. This was the second time Yi Chen had come to Emperor Canyon and arrived in front of Emperor Scar Steely. The last time he came, he was only at Sea of Soul Realm. Even approaching Emperor Scar Steely was difficult. But now, if he wanted to, he could completely touch the Steely. Standing several miles away, Yi Chen looked up at the tall Emperor Scar Steely with a calm expression. Only his blue clothes fluttered in the wind from the Emperor Scar Steely's Emperor Chi and various wills. Clang! Unsheathing the demon-slaughtering sword, Yi Chen's figure flickered as he stabbed at the empty space below the last mark. That mark was left by Yuan Emperor. Space became still and Emperor Chi stagnated. The crimson demon-slaughtering sword's tip erupted with a resplendent red light. This red light, with the sword tip as the center, erupted unceasingly. But strangely, no matter how fierce the eruption was, it was only the size of a fist, as if all of its might was restrained within. Rip! Sword chi wreaked havoc in the empty space below Yuan Emperor's scar, shooting out in a spiral pattern. Yi Chen's sword tip pierced through it. Success! The white-haired old man's hand slightly trembled. Although he had long since known that with Yi Chen's strength, he would definitely be able to leave a mark on the Emperor Scar Steely, he was still a little uncertain. Drifting back, Yi Chen returned to his original position. Everyone looked up and saw that the mark of a sword flower had appeared at the bottom of the Emperor Scar Steely. This sword flower was only the size of a bowl, but the sword intent it emitted was exceptionally sharp. Facing this sword flower, one would feel as if their soul was being pierced. Apart from this, the aura emitted by this sword flower gave off a feeling of space becoming still. Unknowingly, one would be immersed within it, unable to extricate themselves. This was the essence of instant glory. Next, it's the path of death. Yi Chen had been waiting for this day for a very long time. Senior Fire Emperor had failed in the path of death and passed away beneath the mountain behind the Eternal Sky Sect. Senior Dragon King had entered the path of death and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Entering the path of death had already become a knot in the heart of Elysium. Every generation's unparalleled character would enter the path of death, but those who succeeded were few and far between. Although some people could pass through the path of death even without unparalleled strength, they had to rely on heaven-defying luck. Not everyone had heaven-defying luck. That year, the 37-year-old sword King Yi Chen left a sword flower mark on the Emperor Scar Steely. After Yuan Emperor, he was the first person to leave a mark. On this day, Yi Chen left behind a living legend in the Emperor Scar Steely. Near the path of death, almost all the life and death kings were present. Different from the Emperor Scar Steely, they could look at it at any time. On the other hand, entering the path of death could only be done once. Apart from those who had entered the path of death, nobody knew how many experts were guarding the path of death. Nobody knew whether one could enter again after passing through the path of death. Everything was unknown. Therefore, this might be the last time they would see Yi Chen for a very long time. Of course, they hoped that Yi Chen could clear the path of death and kill all the experts guarding the path of death. This way, they would all be able to leave. Unfortunately, this didn't seem too realistic. Yi Chen, you must succeed. Chu Zhongtian said loudly. I will. Standing at the forefront, Yi Chen turned around with a faint smile on his face. Behind him, the pitch-black path of death was like a passage leading to hell. It seemed as if it wanted to devour people, emitting a frightening killing intent. I believe in you, just like how I believe that you won't die so easily at the hands of the Troll Emperor. Du Guju crossed his arms, his white hair dazzling. Many thanks for your trust. I believe that I, Yi Chen, will not stop at the path of death. Sucking in a deep breath, Yi Chen's gaze swept through the crowd. Xianhu, Demon Flower Emperor, Jailer, Shu King, Air Emperor, Spirit Pill King, Du Guju, Dantai Mingyu, Chu Zhongtian, Snowsword of Gojosian, Star Sword King, Lan Sanmai, and finally, Xu Jing and Murong Qingcheng. With an apologetic expression, Yi Chen said, I'm sorry. This time, I have to leave alone again. Don't worry, go. There's still a lot of time in the future. We've only been here for a few decades, Xu Jing said. Murong Qingcheng also nodded. If we don't leave now, when the demons and evil spirits react, they will definitely send even more powerful experts to guard the path of death. At that time, who knows when we'll be able to leave? Yi Chen, when you go out, you must be careful. I don't know what the outside world is like, but it's definitely more dangerous. Murong Qingcheng reminded Yi Chen. I know that. Yi Chen continued, I promise you, even if there's only a sliver of a chance, I will do my best to kill the foreign experts guarding the path of death. After killing the foreign experts guarding the path of death would be completely clear in a short period of time. Everyone would be able to enter and exit freely. However, this was undoubtedly very difficult. Senior Fire Emperor had entered the path of death and couldn't withstand the first wave of attacks. He was seriously injured and died of depression. Therefore, the people inside had no idea how many foreign experts were guarding the path of death. Perhaps, the one who dealt with Senior Fire Emperor was only the weakest of them. Yi Chen, there's no time to lose. Let's act quickly. The one who spoke was Xu Anho. When the foreign race's calamity ended, she had advised Yi Chen to immediately enter the path of death, afraid that things would change. However, Yi Chen didn't want to leave so early and decided to wait until after the new year. Now that more than 3 months had passed, the people outside had probably already found out about the things inside. There were more variables. That's right, it's time to leave. Everyone, I'll leave Elysium to you. Goodbye. After saying goodbye, Yi Chen didn't waste any time. His figure flashed and he rushed into the path of death. Yi Chen, goodbye. Murong Qingcheng waved her hand as she muttered. To the side, Xu Jing sighed. She and Yi Chen, in the end, were only in a close relationship. They hadn't reached the point where they could express their feelings. However, she wasn't anxious. Their lives had just begun, and there would be a day when they would meet again. Looking at the blue-clothed youth disappearing from their sight, everyone's mood was somewhat strange. This unprecedented genius had really left. He was like a mystery. In the first 15 years of his life, he was unknown, just a stupid aristocratic family's disciple. On the day he turned 15, he started to rise, growing step by step, walking towards the peak. In the past 20 years, he had never been defeated among his peers. Now, he had even left his mark on the Emperor Scar Steely, keeping pace with the ancients. For the first 15 years of his life, no one knew of him, and likewise, no one knew of his future. He was like a bright shooting star in the true spirit world, streaking across everyone's hearts and blossoming with his most breathtaking radiance. At this moment, everyone felt like they were in a dream. Yi Chen. Du Guju said in a low voice. His expression was a bit lonely. But soon, his expression became resolute. Wasn't it just a dead end? One day, he would use his own strength to charge through the dead end. Even if he was at the ends of the earth, he would still follow him. In this life, even if he couldn't create his own legend, he would still witness the birth of a legend. In this life, I probably won't be able to surpass him. Every time, he is always ahead. But, this is also good. It saves me the trouble of losing motivation. Chu Zhongtian smiled and rubbed his nose. The dead end was nothing but primal chaos. There was no light, no darkness, no sound. It was a true void. After flying for an unknown amount of time, a wisp of light suddenly appeared in front of them. It was a wisp of dreamy starry skylight. Almost out. Yi Chen's eyes squinted. Who dares to charge into the dead end? Scram. Bang. 2 shadows appeared in front of them. They were 2 demons. Their cultivation bases were at the 5th layer of life and death realm, which was equivalent to 7-star battle strength. Humph. Yi Chen coldly snorted and took out his demon slayer sword, waving it horizontally and vertically. Immediately, a cross-shaped green sword screen shot out. The next moment, the 2 demons' bodies were torn apart, turning into blood mist. Yi Chen's current battle strength was at the peak of 7-star. However, his control over his power allowed him to contend with a 7-star tyrant. And, this was the result without using the 3 flowers borrowing path. Chapter 1027. The dead end was very special. Although there was no light or darkness, It could magnify any light that entered it infinitely. Inside Elysium, everyone could see the flickering light in the dead end. Without any surprise, Yi Chen had already started fighting with the warriors guarding the dead end. However, the light only flickered for a second before it stopped abruptly, as if the battle had already ended. So nervous. Even more nervous than going through the dead end. A lot of people had sweat dripping down their foreheads. As life and death realm warriors, they could already control their secretion. Sweating was something that would never happen to them. However, right now, because they were too nervous, they had the same reaction as ordinary people. Unfortunately, up until now, no one has been able to find a savage stone. If we had one, we would be able to go to the desolate star. With Yi Chen's comprehensive ability, his profound would definitely increase drastically, and his strength might even increase by several folds. At that time, killing all the warriors guarding the dead end would not be a problem. We could also go out for a while and increase our lifespan to 100,000 years. The Savage Stone was the key to enter the Desolate Star. Without this key, no one would be able to enter the Desolate Star. Before the Great Calamity, everyone's biggest hope was to enter the Desolate Star and increase their strength before the calamity. But, without exception, everyone had failed, including Yi Chen. The reason why Yi Chen was going through the dead end now instead of waiting for the Savage Stone to enter the Desolate Star was because he was afraid that the situation might change. It was just like Xianhu had advised Yi Chen to go through the dead end immediately. Once the demons and evil spirit race realized what was going on, they would definitely send even more powerful warriors to guard the dead end. Not to mention the seventh sky of life and death realm, even a slightly more powerful sixth sky of life and death realm warrior would be able to make Yi Chen return in defeat. You have to succeed. Murong Qingcheng and Xu Jing prayed inwardly. The blood mist evaporated, but Yi Chen's speed didn't decrease. Like a sharp sword light, he instantly passed through the dead end. In front of him was an even more vast starry sky. Before he had seen the starry sky here, he had thought that there was no difference between the starry sky of true spirit world and the starry sky outside. At most, there was a difference in size. But now, he didn't think so. The starry sky inside true spirit world seemed natural, but it gave off a lifeless feeling, as if it was artificially created. On the other hand, the starry sky outside seemed even more abstruse and dreamy, brimming with endless possibilities. A single glance was enough to make one dazzled. This is the true starry sky. Yi Chen could sense that deep within him, a shackle had been broken. As that shackle was broken, Yi Chen's aura began to emanate an aura of deathlessness. This sort of deathlessness was not brought about by the immortal sword will, but rather, the explosive increase in longevity. That was because his current longevity had reached 100,000 years, and he was very close to deathlessness. Only by being alive can one have infinite possibilities. The longer one lives, the more possibilities one has. Holding the demon-slaughtering sword in his hand, Yi Chen looked at the 7 foreign race experts surrounding him. They were all at the 5th sky of life and death realm. 3 of them were from the evil spirit race, and the other 4 were demons. Among them, their auras varied in strength. The weakest was at the late stage of the 5th sky of life and death realm, while the strongest was at the peak of the 5th sky. Amazing. You're the first person to walk out of the dead end in the last 15,000 years. Yi Chen's speed of killing the 2 demon kings was too fast. They simply didn't have the time to stop him, and could only bide their time outside, waiting for him to come out. Those 2 demon kings should be the weakest among you guys, right? Among the 5th sky of life and death realm, there were also strong and weak ones. The weakest ones had the battle strength of an ordinary 7-star, while the strong ones had the battle strength of a 7-star overlord. And this was still based on normal standards. For example, Yi Chen was only at the peak of the 3rd sky of life and death realm, but he already had the battle strength of a peak 7-star overlord. If he went all out, even a 7-star overlord would not be his opponent. According to your Elysium, Mo Luo and Suo Jie should have the battle strength of a mid 7-star. But, I didn't expect you to be able to kill them in an instant. They already knew about the defeat of the demons and evil spirit race. While they were shocked, they didn't forget to send the news back. Unfortunately, the distance was too far, and it would take some time to send the news back. Originally, when they saw that Yi Chen didn't immediately rush into the dead end, they were a bit happy. After all, they didn't have absolute confidence in stopping Yi Chen. But they didn't expect that 3 months later, Yi Chen would rush into the dead end. Moreover, the battle strength Yi Chen had displayed made them very apprehensive. Mid 7-star battle strength. Generally speaking, although a peak 7-star battle strength was several times stronger than a mid 7-star battle strength, it still couldn't kill them in an instant. Only when one's strength was 10 times that of a peak 7-star battle strength could it be done. After all, Blood Rebirth Realm was not just for show. How could they know that Yi Chen's control over his power had already reached a frightening level? He could completely display 150% of his attack's power without any wastage. Make your move. I want to see what kind of strength you have to be able to turn the entrance of Elysium into a dead end, and whether you can survive under my sword. Yi Chen never went back on his words. He would do his best to kill this group of foreign race powerhouses guarding the dead end. He wasn't joking. Arrogant. Even if I can't keep you here today, I'll let you know that we demons aren't to be trifled with. The one who attacked was a demon king with a single horn. His strength was actually a little stronger than the Troll Emperor in Elysium. The spear in his hand stabbed forward, and demonic fire bloomed, sweeping across. Ding! Facing the single-horned demon king's full-powered attack, Yi Chen flicked his wrist and pointed his sword at the tip of the spear. It was impeccable, as if it had been precisely measured thousands of times. Poof! The spear shook like a snake, and in the next moment, it flew out of his hand. The powerful single-horned demon king spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body split into pieces. How is this possible? The other 6 widened their eyes, as if they couldn't believe that this was done by Yi Chen. The current Yi Chen was almost a great killing machine. It wasn't that his strength was heaven-defying, but it was still his control of power. As long as one was weaker than him, they would be toyed with in the palm of his hand. If it was the previous Yi Chen, even if his combat strength was as strong as now, he wouldn't be able to do this. At most, he would make the single-horned demon king spit out blood and fly backward. Of course, that sword just now wasn't an ordinary sword move. It was the 3rd move of vibrational sword art, Heaven Absolute Sword, which contained a powerful vibration force. Let's join forces. After knowing how terrifying Yi Chen was, the 6 instantly joined forces, and the body of the single-horned demon king that had been split into pieces quickly reformed and joined them. Kill. 7 7-star powerhouses. The weakest was an advanced 7-star, and the strongest was a 7-star overlord. They attacked Yi Chen at the same time. With such a powerful camp, they could even fight against an 8-star powerhouse. Alright, I'll use you guys to test my limit. Yi Chen didn't use the 3 flowers borrowing the way, nor did he use the momentary brilliance or the space stop ability. He still used the Heaven Absolute Sword and attacked the 7 foreign race powerhouses with 7 consecutive strikes. Puff, puff, puff. Except for the 2 7-star Overlord Evil King and the Demon King, the other 5 powerhouses couldn't even withstand a single blow. Some of them had their weapons knocked out of their hands, their bodies split open, or their arms shook violently and turned into blood mist. At this moment, Yi Chen was a monster in their eyes. It wasn't over yet. After testing his extreme combat strength, Yi Chen released the sword realm that contained the space stop ability and killed 5 of the foreign race powerhouses instantly. When he was about to attack the last 2 7-star Overlord experts, a giant axe suddenly chopped over. This axe was extremely powerful. It looked ordinary, but it cut Yi Chen's sword realm open and shattered the space stop ability into nothingness. In the end, the axe chopped in front of Yi Chen. Momentary brilliance. Yi Chen sucked in a deep breath and stabbed at the axe. Compared to momentary brilliance, the sword realm's space stop ability was a bit weaker. As if entangled by countless threads, the axe's speed slowed down. The tip of the demon slaughtering sword, which was glowing with red light, struck the axe's weak point. With a clang, the huge axe bounced off and landed in the hands of a giant demon. 6th heavenly layer life and death realm. Retreating rapidly, Yi Chen raised his eyes and looked at the giant demon before him, who was completely different from the Troll Emperor, with a grave expression. Powerful. You can actually use the space profound to this extent. This giant demon was dozens of li tall, and his body was extremely robust. The thickness of his arms and legs completely exceeded the norm. That axe just now was thrown by him. Like I said, the death path shouldn't be this simple. Yi Chen wasn't surprised. The demons and evil spirit race attached great importance to Elysium, so it was impossible for them to not have a backup plan. Under normal circumstances, they naturally wouldn't need to expose their backup plan. However, if something happened, the other party would definitely come out. 6th layer life and death realm was equivalent to 8-star battle strength. Moreover, the other party's strength was clearly higher than ordinary 8-star battle strength. Otherwise, an axe thrown over wouldn't have such power. Now, he finally understood why even senior Yuan Emperor couldn't pass the death path. In other words, those invincible figures of different eras were rarely able to pass the death path. Perhaps, they had fallen because of these backup plans. He originally thought that in this era, the Guardians of the Death Path would be a bit weaker. But clearly, he was wrong. The strength of the Guardians of the Death Path hadn't decreased at all. It was merely an illusion created by them not using their full strength. 8-star battle strength. I'm not his opponent even if I use my full strength. I can only leave. Yi Chen glanced at the death path, then his figure flickered and shot into the depths of the starry sky. You guys guard here, I'll go after him. The giant demon with the axe took a step forward and chased after Yi Chen. Powerful demonic ripples triggered waves of energy, allowing his instantaneous movement speed to reach a frightening level. Chapter 1028. Everyone, I have already made it through the death road, but I was also chased by a 6th sky of life and death realm demon king. But, don't worry, he can't do anything to me. In the future, I will definitely come back, and we will meet again. The jade letter in Xu Jing's hand suddenly shattered, and Yi Chen's image appeared. This jade letter contained Yi Chen's essence blood. Even through the world barrier, it could still sense him. Unfortunately, it was only a one-time item, and could not be used for communication. Being chased by a 6th sky of life and death realm demon king. Will he be alright? 6th sky of life and death realm was equivalent to 8-star battle power. Even a low 8-star battle power would be several times more powerful than a 7-star tyrant. If it was a mid 8-star battle power, then it would be 10 times more powerful. Don't worry, Yi Chen said that the opponent can't do anything to him. So, it must be true. After saying these words, Du Guju turned around and left. Haha, let him step on us a bit more. One day, I, Chu Zhongtian, will also go out and have a good look. This life of mine will not be in vain. Chu Zhongtian also left. In the end, only Xianhu, Demon Flower Emperor, Xu Jing, and Murong Qingcheng were left. The sea is wide, and the sky is free for the birds to fly. Perhaps the outside world is more suitable for him. The inside world is a bit closed after all. Sighing, Xianhu said to the three, let's go. The great calamity of the alien race has just passed, and Elysium's vitality has been greatly damaged. Fortunately, Yi Chen has fixed some of the rules, and some of them have already reached the 1st sky of life and death realm under the guidance of the palace spirit. But, we still can't be careless. It would be best if we can find the savage stone. Right now, all of the kings in Elysium did not amount to more than 300, and this was counting the underground races. Otherwise, there would only be 100. If another great calamity of the alien race came, they would not be able to handle it. After all, Yi Chen had already left. Of course, although this great calamity had caused them to lose a lot of members, it had also allowed their strength to increase by leaps and bounds. With the help of the demonic source, Murong Qingcheng had already reached the peak of the 3rd sky of life and death realm. Together with Xu Jing and Du Guju, they had become the pillars of the young generation of Elysium. If they were given some time, they would definitely continue to improve. In addition, Yi Chen had also left behind a consciousness projection. Even if this projection only had 1/3 of Yi Chen's battle power, it still had a high-level 7-star battle power. However, this projection was currently in closed-door training, accumulating Jin Yuan, and would not casually battle with others. Yi Chen, see you in the future. Brother Yi, see you in the future. Glancing at the dead end, the four left together. Regardless of whether it was the starry sky of Elysium or the starry sky outside Elysium, one could not travel through the space. If the starry sky inside Elysium was so solid that even 7 Star Kings could not shake it, then the starry sky outside was 10 times, or even dozens of times more solid. Fortunately, flying in the starry sky was much faster than flying in Elysium's void. There was almost no resistance, and the further they went, the faster they would go. You can't escape. The Unicorn Demon King threw the huge axe in his hand from time to time. With his 8-star battle power, once the axe hit the enemy, even if the enemy had the battle power of a 7-star tyrant, they would still be cut in half and suffer heavy injuries. Seems like the 6th sky of life and death realm's speed is roughly like this. In fact, Yi Chen was testing how fast a 6th sky of life and death realm's speed was. After all, with each increase in realm, the Jin Yuan would become purer, and the speed would increase by a large margin. Conversely, the same was true for demonic power. The 4th layer of sword domain erupted, and Yi Chen's speed suddenly increased by several folds, leaving the Unicorn Demon King behind until he disappeared without a trace. Damn it! The Unicorn Demon King stopped and fiercely glared at the starry sky ahead. Originally, he believed that with his 6th sky of life and death realm cultivation, his speed should be faster than the opponent's, and he would soon catch up. He didn't expect that the opponent's normal speed was not much slower than his. Ch, consider yourself lucky. But, with just you alone, even if you're given a lifetime, you won't be able to create any waves. The Unicorn Demon King wasn't very apprehensive of Yi Chen. Their demons were filled with experts, and demon kings like him were innumerable. Above them, there were still 7th and 8th sky of life and death realm, and even 9th sky of life and death realm. They could be said to be the most powerful race in the boundless starry sky. Moreover, although the evil spirit race wasn't as powerful as them, it wasn't weak either. Although Yi Chen was a genius, if he wanted to contend against 2 races by himself, it would undoubtedly be like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Holding the huge axe, the Unicorn Demon King rushed in the direction he came from. I can use the puppet battleship now. After flying for several 100 million li in one breath, Yi Chen took out an 800 meters long puppet battleship from his supreme grade storage ring. This time, he had brought a total of 10 battleships. The rest had been left in Elysium, and the majority had been distributed to others. The rest had been stored in the Falling Dust Sword sect in case of emergency. Although the battle strength of the puppet battleship wasn't much, it had a spatial shuttle array arranged on it. As long as the energy of the spatial stone was activated, it could travel through space. Traveling through space in the starry sky was many times faster than in Elysium. Elysium was possibly a man-made world. Therefore, its natural laws weren't perfect, and its space was also simulated. It seemed boundlessly mysterious, but in the end, it didn't contain the true mysteries of the universe. The cabin door opened, and Yi Chen walked in. At the front of the battleship was a huge and bright control room. In front of the control room were dozens of flat crystals. Through the crystals, one could see the outside world. However, from the outside, one couldn't see inside, and soul power couldn't enter either. The entire battleship had countless arrays arranged on it. There were spatial shuttle arrays, fortification arrays, soul power isolation arrays, energy circulation arrays, defensive arrays, and so on. Without any exaggeration, the price of a battleship was astonishing. It wasn't something an ordinary life and death king could afford. Start the battleship, full speed ahead. In the center of the control room was a meter-tall metal pillar. At the top of the pillar was a skull-sized crystal ball. This crystal ball was the core of the battleship. In order to control the battleship, one would have to leave a soul imprint on it. Only through the soul imprint would one be able to control the battleship to the greatest degree. Whoosh, whoosh. Dozens of hidden devices on the sides and tail of the battleship opened, shooting out dazzling blue flames. After a slight pause, the huge battleship moved forward at full speed. This star map can only record a limited number of stars. Not every star can be recorded. The crystal ball's radiance circulated, and a light screen appeared above it. On the screen were numerous twinkling stars. The closest one was a fiery red star. It seemed to be the closest star, but its actual distance was unknown. After all, the stars in the starry sky couldn't be described with numbers. There were billions and billions of stars. Clearly, this fiery red star was an important star, which was why it was recorded. And according to the scale, the distance between the two places was 900,000 light-years. Let's go to this star called Firebird first. Yi Chen's finger pointed at the fiery red star. Soon, the battleship's speed reached the point where it could travel through space. Connect to the spatial stone and travel. Through the soul imprint, Yi Chen issued an order. Beginning space travel. 10, 9, 8, 7, 3, 2, 1. A mechanical voice sounded. Then, with a hum, the battleship shook violently and entered a mysterious chaotic space. As expected, this is the real void. The void of Elysium is just a facade. Traveling through the void, it was unknown how much time had passed. When it came out again, according to the scale, Yi Chen found that the battleship had traveled 300,000 light-years. And only 1 year had passed. It's too fast. It traveled 300,000 light-years in 1 year. This speed shocked Yi Chen. But when he thought about the vastness of the universe, this speed didn't seem to be much. Otherwise, if it was too slow, by the time it reached Firebird, hundreds or thousands of years might have passed. This battleship could travel through space for a maximum of 1 year. After 1 year, it would need to wait a month before it could travel again. If it traveled continuously, it would cause the space travel matrix to collapse, destroying the most valuable part of the battleship. Therefore, for the next period of time, the battleship slowly flew in space. Hey, isn't that the battleship of our demons? In front of them, a small battleship approached. This battleship was only 100 meters long, but it was much more luxurious than Yi Chen's. Inside the battleship were 2 6th-layer Life and Death Realm Demon Kings and 6 5th-layer Life and Death Realm Demon Kings. Their destination this time was Elysium. They were going to change shifts. Which Demon King of my demon race is inside? Come out. One of the 6th-layer Life and Death Realm Demon Kings yelled. Yi Chen's expression changed. He had almost forgotten that there was a difference between the battleship of the demons and the evil spirit race. In other words, the battleship of each race was different in the outside world. If he were to openly ride the battleship of the demons to the Firebird planet, he might immediately be chased by a large number of demon kings. It seems like I'll have to use the battleship of the demons less in the future. Right now, I still can't contend against all the demons. Putting away the battleship, Yi Chen's figure flickered, shooting into the distance. It's not one of our demons. Chase. The 8 demon kings were furious. There was actually someone who wanted to rob the battleship of the demons. It was simply courting death. However, they soon exchanged glances. With the speed of their battleship, they actually couldn't catch up to the other party. As for the space travel, it was not used to chase people. Otherwise, a single space travel could bring them to a very distant place. Chapter 1029. The starlight was resplendent, deep and dreamy. In this boundless starry sky, the stars had become the main theme of the entire world. It was precisely because of their existence that the starry sky did not seem so desolate and lifeless, giving this world an indescribable vitality and beauty. In the distance, a blue puppet battleship was speeding over. This was a puppet battleship that was over 300 meters long. The lines of the battleship were very smooth, and there was not the slightest obstruction from the beginning to the end. Occasionally, one would see a blue flowing light flashing along the body of the battleship. It was noble and sharp. On the left and right sides of the battleship, there were 2 patterns of blue leaves. If an expert were here, they would certainly recognize that this was a mid-sized Heavenly King battleship. Its price was 50 times that of an ordinary mid-sized King-grade battleship, and 10 times that of a large King-grade battleship. Its defensive cover could withstand the continuous attacks of a 4th-layer king, and it could even withstand the attacks of a 5th-layer king for a period of time. At this moment, in the control room at the front of the battleship, a man and a woman were standing there, gazing at the starry sky through a crystal. The woman was in her 20s. She had a head of long blue hair, a pretty face, and a straight nose. Her figure seemed a bit thin, and her complexion was abnormally pale, as if she had just recovered from a serious illness. The man was a black-haired old man. He did not stand shoulder to shoulder with the woman, but instead took a step back. "Uncle Lin, how long have we been out this time?" the woman asked. "Second, miss, about 5 years," the black-haired old man said. 5 years have passed so quickly. Fortunately, the 5 years were not wasted. There is indeed a resurrection fruit in the Black Death secret realm. With this fruit, sister will be able to recover. The woman revealed a faint smile. Yeah, with Big Miss's talent, she shouldn't have died so early. She could have easily attacked the 5th, 6th, or even 7th layer of life and death realm, becoming the first Emperor-grade character of our Lanya family in thousands of years. If Big Miss can become an Emperor-grade character, our Lanya family will become the #1 family on the Firebird Star. Speaking of the woman's elder sister, the black-haired old man couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. She is only 42 years old this year, but she has already reached the 4th sky of life and death realm. Compared to her, I am still far behind. However, she has also sacrificed a lot for the family. This time, she almost died. How I wish I could lend her a helping hand. That's right. That's right. Second, miss, don't look down on yourself. Being able to cultivate to the 2nd sky of life and death realm at the age of 38 is already extremely rare. What you lack is just a lot of life and death battles. In his heart, the black-haired old man did not think that the 2nd miss was inferior to the 1st miss. The only difference was that the 1st miss was strong, while the 2nd miss was too kind and did not like to fight. Creak. The cabin door of the control room opened, and a young man in a fiery red shirt walked in. "Shin, what are you talking about with Uncle Lin? Let's have a drink in the lobby." The woman called Shin creased her brows. This young man was the successor of the Firebird Star Firebird family. His name was Young Master Firebird, and his strength was quite frightening. He was ranked 5th among the Firebird Star's 10 heroes. He was only 40 this year, but he had already cultivated to the peak of the 3rd sky of life and death realm. If he could enter the 4th sky, he would certainly be ranked in the top 3. 5 years ago, because the Lanya family did not have enough kings, the Black Death secret realm was too dangerous. Therefore, they hired a group of kings, and this young Master Firebird joined them at that time. Anyone with discerning eyes could see that this young Master Firebird was interested in the 2nd miss of the Lanya family. How could he let go of such a rare opportunity? The black-haired old man looked displeased as he said, "Young Master Firebird, our 2nd miss is too tired. She won't accompany you for a drink. Next time you enter the control room, please knock on the cabin door." "Hee, in a moment of desperation, I forgot." Young Master Firebird's eyes squinted as a cold light surged within them. This Uncle Lin had spoken rudely to him time and time again, which was really annoying. If not for his cultivation base being at the 5th sky of life and death realm and the #1 expert on this battleship, he would have taught him a lesson, lest he thought he was something else. No matter how powerful he was only a servant. "Young Master Firebird, I'm sorry. Shin is not in the mood today. Let's do it another day." Lan Shin declined tactfully. "All right then, I hope Shin won't refuse me next time. After all, you and I have been through life and death together for 5 years. How many 5 years are there in a life?" Exiting the control room, young Master Firebird closed the cabin door. Humph. Seeing young Master Firebird leave, Uncle Lin coldly snorted and said to Lan Shin, "Second miss, sometimes, you have to be a bit tougher. Don't let others lead you by the nose. In this regard, eldest miss is much better than you. Sister is sister after all, and I am me. Moreover, during these 5 years, he has indeed helped us a lot." As Lan Shin spoke, she looked toward the sky again. The sky was her favorite scenery, and she could only see it for a long time when the puppet battleship could not travel. Hey! As if sensing something, the blue color in Lan Shin-er's eyes deepened. Through the crystal, she saw a beam of light flying toward them. "Someone is here," Lan Shin-er said. "What's wrong?" Although Uncle Lin's strength was many times more powerful than Lan Xin'er's, he did not have her eyesight, and his soul power could not spread out too far. A person is flying in this direction. Caution is the parent of safety. People of the Lanya family, listen up. Puppet cannons, prepare to charge. Uncle Lin's voice came through the crystal ball in the center of the control room. Yes. On the outer wall of the blue battleship, dozens of puppet cannons extended out. As a king-level battleship, these puppet cannons could kill kings at the third sky of life and death realm. If given enough time, they could even severely wound kings at the fourth sky of life and death realm. Of course, this was under the condition that the opponent did not move. Therefore, they needed to charge in advance, ready to attack at any time. After getting rid of the demon's battleship, Yi Chen continued flying for a day and a night, trying his best to deviate from his original path. On this day, he used his soul eye and looked in all directions. After cultivating the Yuan spirit secret art, Yi Chen's soul eye could already see everything within 2 billion li. Soon, a blue battleship entered his sight. This battleship did not seem to be inferior to the small demon's battleship, but its size was several times bigger. On both sides of the battleship, there was a blue leaf pattern, which was probably the symbol of some family. Since his own battleship could not be exposed, Yi Chen decided to take a free ride. At worst, he would just have to pay a small fee. After making up his mind, Yi Chen flew toward the blue battleship at 60 to 70% speed. He did not want to be too shocking and be feared by others. 10,000 li away, Yi Chen stopped. His eyes first scanned the dozen puppet cannons on the battleship, then landed on the blue battleship's crystal. "Who are you? What business do you have?" A slightly aged voice was heard. "I'm Yi Chen, and I'm planning to go to the Firebird Star. I wonder if you can give me a ride." Of course, the fee will not be small. Yi Chen did not say too much. The less he said, the better. If he said too much, he would be exposed, although he had no secrets. "No, we're not going to the Firebird Star." The other side refused. Although a bit disappointed, Yi Chen did not give up. This place is several 100,000 light-years away from the Firebird Star. If I fly there myself, I'm afraid it will take countless years. Don't worry, my cultivation base is only at the third sky of life and death realm, so I'm not a threat to you. As for the fee, as long as it is not too excessive, I can accept it. This blue battleship was noble and imposing, obviously coming from a big family. Yi Chen did not believe that there were no experts above the third sky of life and death realm on it. "Uncle Lin, let him come up. I don't think he's a bad guy. Moreover, this place is indeed too far from the Firebird Star. Leaving him here alone is a bit inappropriate." Lan Xin'er's pair of beautiful eyes looked at Uncle Lin. Uncle Lin smiled bitterly. This second miss was too kind. Could she tell a good or bad person with her eyes? If she could, there wouldn't be so many sanctimonious people in this world. "All right, but the fee must be collected. We're not doing charity." Uncle Lin agreed. Yi Chen was only at the third sky of life and death realm, so he indeed did not pose too much of a threat. For a youngster like him, it was quite amazing. However, even Firebird Prince didn't dare to act presumptuously in front of him, so how powerful could this youngster be? One more or one less wouldn't affect Yi Chen at all. If the other dared to make any strange moves, he would immediately kill him without any mercy. "Our second miss is kind enough to agree to take you to the Firebird Star. Come on up," Uncle Lin said. "Many thanks." Cupping his fists, Yi Chen flew toward the blue battleship. The cabin door slowly opened, revealing a man and a woman standing inside. The man was a black-haired old man, who should be the one who spoke just now. The woman had blue hair and a pretty face. She was most likely the second miss of his family. Many thanks to this second miss. Yi Chen cupped his fists again and entered the battleship. The cabin door closed. Uncle Lin said, "This place is 600,000 light-years away from the Firebird Star. For 10,000 light-years, I'll charge you 10 yuan stones. 600 yuan stones in total." Uncle Lin, Lan Xin'er was startled. 600 yuan stones was not a small number. Under normal circumstances, 120 yuan stones would be enough for 600,000 light-years. All right. Unexpectedly, Yi Chen readily agreed and took out 600 primal chaos crystals from his storage ring, handing them over to the other party. Yuan stones were the currency of the outside world. They contained an extremely powerful energy and could be absorbed by any race. In terms of energy, 1 Yuan stone was equivalent to 10,000 extreme-grade spirit stones. However, its value was at least 10,000 times more than extreme-grade spirit stones. The reason why Yi Chen had Yuan stones was because the battleship's energy source was these stones. Each battleship had several hundred Yuan stones in reserve. He had several tens of thousands of Yuan stones on him. Chapter 1030. It seems like you're quite rich. Uncle Lin had actually asked for an exorbitant price and waited for Yi Chen to bargain. 300 Yuan stones was his bottom line, but he hadn't expected that Yi Chen would agree without hesitation. What he didn't know was that Yi Chen had no concept of Yuan stones. He thought that 10 Yuan stones was normal for a journey of 10,000 light-years. Since he had accepted Luo Yunyang's money, Uncle Lin said, "There is a luxurious room on the Blue Leaf. You can stay there. Also, you can enjoy the delicious food and wine in the lounge. If you don't like it, you can ask the chef to cook according to your instructions. I guarantee that you'll be satisfied." The biggest use of a battleship puppet was for traveling. Its secondary use was to rest. The universe was vast. If one didn't have a battleship puppet, they would feel like they had been traveling their entire lives. With a battleship puppet, they could travel and cultivate at the same time. When they were free, they could even sit in the lounge and drink some wine and eat some good food. "Young Master Yi, why are you stranded here alone?" While Uncle Lin and Yi Chen were talking, Lan Xin was carefully sizing up Yi Chen. Yi Chen looked very young. At least on the surface, he seemed to be a year or two younger than young Master Firebird. He looked to be in his early 20s. He was dressed in a spotless blue robe and had a treasured sword at his waist. Although the sword was still sheathed, it gave off a reserved feeling. Yi Chen's appearance was delicate and handsome. His face was slightly pale, and his eyes were as clear as a lake. However, they were deep and unfathomable. Based on appearance alone, Yi Chen couldn't be considered a pitilessly handsome man. However, in terms of temperament, Lan Xin had never seen anyone more outstanding than Yi Chen. Yi Chen didn't want to lie to her, so he said, "I came from a faraway place. I plan to make a trip to the Firebird planet. As for the details, I won't go into detail." Lan Xin nodded. Everyone had their own secrets. Since Luo Yunyang wasn't willing to tell her, she wouldn't force him. "Uncle Lin was being cautious, so I lied to you. We're going to the Firebird planet. Since it's on the way, that's for the best. Thank you for your hospitality." Yi Chen was already satisfied that the other party was willing to let him board the warship. As for the rest, it didn't matter. The luxurious room on the Blue Leaf was indeed very luxurious. It was spacious enough, and there was even a huge bathing pool inside for bathing. Opposite the bathing pool was a 5-meter square crystal. Through the crystal, one could see the starry sky outside. Bathing and watching the starry sky at the same time was an enjoyable experience. After taking a bath, Yi Chen began to cultivate. He was not in a hurry to break through to the 4th layer. Although there was a certain chance of success, it would be too much for the gate to bear. By the time he tried to break through to the 5th layer, it would completely collapse. Every time he tried to break through to the next realm, he had to refine the gate to an extremely firm and stable state. During the battle with the Troll Emperor, Yi Chen had risked his life to break through to the 3rd layer, which had already caused some cracks to appear in the gate. Although they were not obvious, they were still a hidden danger that could not be ignored. Therefore, for a long time to come, he would not be able to break through to the 4th heavenly layer. Only by condensing his Dao gate to a very solid degree could he begin the next step. However, although the realm could not be increased, it did not mean that his strength could not be increased. The 4th style of Autumn Water Sword Arts, Autumn Water, was created because both the Metal Profound and Water Profound had reached perfection, but they had yet to be completely fused. The fusion of 2 profounds to perfection was much more difficult than he had imagined. Once he succeeded, its might would multiply, and it would not be any weaker than the current merciless water and fire. The third style of vibrational sword arts, Sky Extinction Sword, had made great progress in the past year. With the completion of the Metal Profound, as long as the Earth Profound reached perfection as well, the Sky Extinction Sword would undergo a complete transformation. One sword strike would be able to shatter anything. This was his favorite sword move, and it had always been successful. At present, Yi Chen's two strongest sword moves were Merciless Water and Instant Glory. Merciless Water and Fire contained the Water Profound and Fire Profound. The Water Profound was already at perfection, while the Fire Profound was at great completion. Although the balance had been broken, its might had increased a lot. What he needed to do was to comprehend the Fire Profound to perfection as well. At that time, Merciless Water and Fire would be the real Merciless Water and Fire. It would be many times more powerful than ordinary top profound sword skills, and it could even be 10 times more powerful. With one sword strike, it could burn and destroy everything. As for Instant Glory, it was very special. This sword move contained the Space Profound, but Yi Chen's Space Profound was only at 70% completion. However, the power it could display was actually greater than Merciless Water and Fire. From this, it could be seen that the Space Profound was one of the strongest profounds, and it was not without reason. If Yi Chen's Space Profound could reach 80 or 90% completion, the power of Instant Glory would be unimaginable. However, Yi Chen still felt that the Instant Glory, which only contained 70% of Space Profound, still had a lot of untapped potential. It was like a pile of ordinary iron. An ordinary blacksmith could only forge an ordinary iron sword, while a famous blacksmith could forge a well-tempered sword that could cut iron like mud. Space Profound was different from other profounds. There were many areas that needed to be explored. One couldn't blindly focus on improving Space Profound. Instead, one should unearth the potential of Space Profound one by one. Only with a good foundation would one be able to go further in the future. 1 month is up. Let's go through space. In the control room, Lan Xina used her soul imprint to control the blue leaf. Buzz. A spatial whirlpool appeared in front of the blue leaf. Slowly, the blue leaf entered it and disappeared. Comprehending profounds on a battleship wasn't very realistic. Profounds were the operating laws of nature. One needed to observe and understand nature in order to improve. Thus, Yi Chen set his sights on fusing profounds. First was the Autumn Water Sword ART's fourth move, Autumn Water. In the past year, he had gained a lot of comprehension in the fusion of Metal Profound and Water Profound. He was just a step away from the next step. Half a month later, the door was finally kicked open. With the perfect fusion of Metal and Water Profounds, not only did the Autumn Water Sword ART's power double, but its attack form also became illusory. One couldn't tell the difference between real and fake. If the Merciless Water and Merciless Fire were purely destructive, then the Autumn Water Sword art could kill without spilling blood. It was hard to tell which of the two moves was superior. Each had its own merits. The Autumn Water Sword art had been successfully completed. Next, Yi Chen focused all of his attention on Moment of Glory. Time passed bit by bit. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. It's a pity that I can't test the power of the Instant Glory here. In the past 3 months, Yi Chen had improved a lot. He had unearthed the potential of the Instant Glory. Of course, this was mainly due to the accumulation of the past year. It's time to go out and take a walk. After not going out for 3 months, Yi Chen felt that his body was a little rusty. After opening the room door and walking through a long corridor, Yi Chen arrived at a luxurious hall. The Hall of the Blue Leaf was located in the center of the puppet warship. It was 50 meters long and 30 meters wide. It wouldn't feel crowded even if it contained a few hundred people. The hall was brightly lit. About 100 people were drinking tea and chatting. It was quite lively. Yi Chen didn't attract much attention when he came out. There would be people entering the room to cultivate every day. On the other hand, there would be people coming out to drink and chat. He found a seat, and soon, a waiter walked over. "What would you like to drink and eat?" Yi Chen opened the menu and said, I'll have a bottle of supreme-grade star wine and some dishes to go with it. You have to pay for supreme-grade wine. The star wine is 10 yuan stones per bottle. Anything that was supreme-grade would not be cheap. On the Blue Leaf, they could eat and drink as much as they wanted without paying, but supreme-grade wine still had to be paid. Here. Yi Chen didn't mind and gave the waiter 10 yuan stones. Soon, the dishes were served, and Yi Chen slowly enjoyed them. Young Master Firebird, your Fire Thunder Divine Fist is truly powerful. It killed a sentient second-layer life and death realm giant star beast with one punch. On the other side of the hall, a dozen kings were talking and laughing. Actually, that star beast was not weak. If not for my Fire Thunder God Fist's improvement, I might not have been able to kill it in one punch. A young man in fiery red clothes said modestly, "You're too modest. Star beasts usually don't have any intelligence, and those that do are extremely frightening. A life and death second-layer star beast is completely comparable to a life and death king, but it still couldn't take one punch from you. Hehe, everyone is flattering me too much. Come, let's drink." The young man called Young Master Firebird was very happy to be flattered and repeatedly raised his cup. "Brother, when did you come in? How come I haven't seen you before?" On Yi Chen's side, a king in his 30s walked over and asked suspiciously, "I came here 3 months ago. So that's how it is. You should have followed a team on an expedition, but the team got into trouble and lost your puppet battleship, right?" The middle-aged king had seen this kind of situation many times. Not everyone had a puppet battleship. Only those big families or powerful kings had the qualifications to own one. Without a puppet battleship, if one wanted to return, they could only hitch a ride. Of course, they would have to pay some yuan stones. Yi Chen smiled but didn't explain. Young Master Firebird's voice was too noisy, causing the middle-aged king to sigh with emotion. That young Master Firebird is indeed extraordinary. He's only at the peak of the 3rd layer, but he already has such a frightening battle strength. Even a giant star beast that has cultivated to the 2nd layer of life and death realm couldn't withstand one punch from him. It's said that he can contend against a 4th layer heavenly king. Seems very powerful. Of course, he is one of the top 10 young heroes of Firebird Star. With his Fire Thunder God Fist, it's hard to find an opponent. However, you're so young, and your cultivation base is not inferior to young Master Firebird. Seems like you're also a great genius. The middle-aged king sized up Yi Chen and smiled. "I was just lucky." Yi Chen faintly smiled. Chapter 1031. While talking with him, Yi Chen asked about some things he didn't know. Gradually, he got a general understanding of the outside world. In the vast universe, there were many worlds that were suitable for life to evolve. There were high-level worlds and low-level worlds. High-level worlds had perfect rules and powerful individuals. Low-level worlds had more incomplete rules. The further one progressed, the more restrictions they would face. Therefore, if one wanted to continue growing, he or she would have to leave the world he or she was in. Besides the many worlds, there were also some planets with life. They were all huge. The smallest one had a diameter of more than 10 million miles. The biggest one had a diameter of more than 100 million miles. There were even superplanets with a diameter of several 100 million miles or even 1 billion miles. No matter if it was a planet with a diameter of more than 10 million miles or 1 billion miles, they all had one thing in common. They had a strong rejection of energy. It was speculated that the core of a planet with life should be an unimaginably condensed energy core. Any other person's energy paled in comparison to it. No, it was like an ant in front of the ocean. It was not worth mentioning. Therefore, outside of a planet with life, you might be able to destroy a planet with a diameter of 10,000 miles. However, on a planet with life, it was already not bad if you could destroy a mountain. The Firebird star was one of the many stars with life. It had a diameter of 27 million miles, and there were countless life forms living on it. There were humans, beasts, half-demons, and demons. However, there weren't any races like the demon race or the evil spirit race that were extremely domineering. It's really a terrifying planet with life. Compared to the Firebird planet, The planet that Yi Chen had been on before he transmigrated was like a sesame seed. There was no comparison at all. As for the important planets recorded in the core of the puppet battleship, they were probably planets with life. Suddenly, the noise in the hall grew louder. Miss Lan Xin'er is out. The Lanya family's first and second young ladies are both swordsmen. The first young lady's sword art is sharp and overbearing. She is invincible. The second young lady's sword art is dreamy and beautiful. However, in comparison, the second young lady is more charming. She is indeed one of the 5 beauties of the Firebird planet. Lan Xin'er's appearance immediately attracted everyone's attention. Xin'er, you're finally out. Come, sit here. The Firebird smiled when he saw Lan Xin'er. He stood up and invited her to take a seat. The seat beside him was specially reserved for her. Miss, this seat is more comfortable. Uncle Lin chose another seat for Lan Xin'er. Thank you, Uncle Lin. Hearing this, Lan Xin'er sat down. With his strength, he could contend against a 4th-layer life and death realm heavenly king, but he had to be an ordinary king. And this ordinary was only relative. To be able to cultivate to the 4th layer, who wasn't a genius? Perhaps entering the life and death realm without too much of a genius could also succeed. However, to reach the 4th layer, one needed absolute talent. He could contend against an ordinary 4th-layer life and death realm heavenly king, but it would be a bit difficult for him to contend against a powerful one. Not to mention that Uncle Lin was a 5th-layer life and death realm expert. Of course, regardless of whether he had the strength to surpass Uncle Lin or not, he wouldn't do anything that would be beneath his dignity in front of Lan Xin'er. As if to dissolve the awkwardness of the Firebird Prince, a youngster beside him said with a smile, "In this trip to the Black Death secret realm, Miss Xin'er's sword arts have made astonishing progress. In my opinion, even if Miss Xin'er isn't in the top 5, she's at least in the top 10. Xin'er knows her own limits. She's fine when exchanging pointers, but in a real fight, I reckon they can beat me in 2 or 3 moves." Lan Xin'er creased her brows. She didn't like being flattered. The Firebird Prince recovered from the awkwardness and said with a smile, "Xin'er, you don't need to be modest. In my opinion, although Yu Tianhen's sword arts aren't bad, the traces are too obvious. It can't compare to your ethereal elegance. If it weren't for the fact that your cultivation level is slightly lower, he might not be your opponent." "Hehe, thank you for your praise. I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first." The reason why Lan Xin'er didn't come out often was because she didn't want to be the center of attention. She didn't want people to flatter her intentionally or unintentionally. She liked a quiet life where no one would disturb her. When talking to her, people could treat her like an ordinary person. Lan Xin'er stood up and left her seat, walking in the direction of Yi Chen. "Do you mind if I sit here?" Lan Xin'er asked with a smile. "Of course not. Miss Xin'er, please sit," the middle-aged king hurriedly said. Lan Xin'er looked at Yi Chen. "Anything is fine." Yi Chen nodded. Lan Xin'er elegantly sat down and said, "This seems to be the first time you've come out in 3 months. You're really hardworking." As the owner of the Blue Leaf ship, Lan Xin'er knew everything about the Blue Leaf ship. "It's not really hardworking. I'm used to it." Yi Chen indeed treated cultivation as the most ordinary thing and didn't think it was very hard. "You're the same as my sister. You treat cultivation as the only thing and don't care about anything else." Lan Xin'er asked someone to bring over a bottle of top-grade Blue Leaf wine. This was a fine wine produced by the Blue Leaf family, and it was very rare. She poured a cup for Yi Chen and the middle-aged king before pouring one for herself. Everyone pursues different things, so the path they choose is also different. However, for me, cultivation is a part of life and not the only thing. Yi Chen took a sip of the Blue Leaf wine and felt that it was slightly better than the star wine. "Hehe, it seems that I misspoke." Lan Xin'er felt that Yi Chen was very different. He was different from all the young people she had met. He was like a cloud in the sky, so quiet and pure. It was as if nothing around him could affect his state of mind. Sitting with him, the unhappiness she had felt earlier gradually disappeared. Her heart was like still water. She seemed to see the blue leaves of her family dancing in the sky, ethereal and beautiful. This was also the main reason why she had walked over. Mr. Yi, you're a swordsman. Although I haven't seen your sword technique, I can guess that it must be very powerful. I wonder if you can explain it to me? Lan Xin'er suddenly said. Please. Yi Chen nodded. 5 years ago, my sword intent had already reached the peak of the 6th rank. I've experienced countless battles on this trip, but why hasn't my sword intent improved at all? Going to the Black Death secret realm was not only to find the soul-returning fruit, but also to train himself. Yi Chen looked at Lan Xin'er and said, Your heart is not firm enough. You are still hesitating. A swordsman should advance courageously and have no regrets. Actually, I can see that you don't like fighting. So, you're not suitable to be a swordsman. The middle-aged king was dumbfounded. Yi Chen's words were too much of a blow. Moreover, it was from a girl. Uncle Lin was slightly angered. Yi Chen's words were too unpleasant, although they weren't without reason. Lan Xin'er's expression changed several times. Finally, she smiled bitterly and said, Your words are the same as my sister's. She also thinks that I'm not suitable to be a swordsman. However, the swordsman in my heart is different from you guys. The sword doesn't have to kill. It can also be used to entertain oneself. The definition of a swordsman is just something added by the later generations. Yi Chen smiled. You know what I mean by a swordsman. It's just that you don't want to admit it. Swordsman was just a name. Being entangled with this name meant that one still had some stubbornness. In other words, if Lan Xin'er didn't agree with the concept of a swordsman, she could say that she wasn't a swordsman. I can't out-talk you. Lan Xin'er was speechless. Arrogant. You dare to represent swordsmen with just your words. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. A discordant voice came. It was young Master Firebird. It turned out that Lan Xin'er's departure to come to Yi Chen's place had annoyed the Firebird Prince a lot. He felt that he had lost a lot of face, so he brought a group of people over. Hearing Yi Chen's words, it gave him the opportunity to speak. Your cultivation is not low, but your tone is not small. A young swordsman beside young Master Firebird mocked. Yi Chen didn't raise his head and said indifferently, You already said that it's just my words. I also didn't say that I can represent swordsmen. When did you hear me say that? If I, young Master Firebird, say that you said it, then you said it. Why? Do you think there's a problem? I don't have a problem. It's you who has a problem. Yi Chen's expression was indifferent. He wasn't angry at all. You. Young Master Firebird's eyes were spitting fire. Young Master Firebird, why bother talking nonsense with him? The young swordsman took a step forward. I am Yi Chen. Do you dare to fight with me? In the Firebird planet, the Firebird clan was the strongest. Although his clan wasn't small, if he could build a good relationship with the future successor of the Firebird clan, it would be very beneficial to him. Young Master Yu, this is a conversation between me and young Master Yi. You guys are too rude. Lan Xin'er's face was filled with anger. She couldn't help but look at Uncle Lin, hoping that he would stop them. Uncle Lin didn't like what Yi Chen had said just now. He felt that it was not a bad thing for someone to take him down a notch. He said, Second lady, it's only a fight. It doesn't matter. Anyway, fighting on the blue leaf doesn't allow Jin Yuan or willpower. It's just a competition of sword arts. Uncle Lin. Lan Xin'er felt a bit sorry for Yi Chen. She could feel that he wasn't targeting her. He was just speaking the truth, although it wasn't pleasant to hear. However, this Yi Chen was not a normal character. His cultivation base was at the peak of the third sky of life and death realm. He was a famous sword artist among the young generation of the Firebird planet, and people called him the Shuyang Sword King. Chapter 1032. What, you don't dare? Yi Chen's tone was full of disdain. Young Master Firebird sneered as well. Although Yi Chen talked big, he was afraid that he would be nothing more than an embroidered pillow in a fight. He was very clear about Yi Chen's strength. Within the third sky of life and death realm, apart from a few people, he was practically unrivaled. His rising sun sword arts were even more tyrannical and unstoppable. Without using Jin Yuan and willpower, his advantage was even greater. After cultivating for 3 months, my body is getting rusty. In that case, let's get some exercise. Unexpectedly, Yi Chen didn't refuse. It was not that he was eager to show off, but he was following his heart. His heart was telling him that if he didn't accept this battle, there would be even more troubles in the future. Young Master Yi, be careful. This Yu Chen is not only tyrannical in his sword arts, but also a body-refining expert. Seeing that the situation had already turned out like this, Lan Xin'er could only secretly warn Yi Chen. No matter. Yi Chen didn't care about Yu Chen's strength, as it was meaningless. The blue leaf was 380 meters long, 130 meters wide, and 90 meters tall. It was divided into several levels, and opening up a huge training field was a piece of cake. On the martial field, there were many people exchanging pointers. They didn't use any true essence or will, they were competing purely on their own martial arts skills. Suddenly, they saw over 100 people arrive on the martial field. They couldn't help but stop and look over with a strange expression. Could it be that 2 heavyweights were going to compete in martial arts? Worthy of being a king-grade battleship. Compared to ordinary king-grade battleships, it's countless times more powerful. From his previous conversation with the middle-aged king, Yi Chen knew that puppet battleships were divided into various grades. The most common ones were king-grade battleships, followed by king-grade battleships, and even better ones were emperor-grade battleships. The 10 demons battleships in his storage ring were the most common ones. They were purely used to carry people, and didn't have many things to enjoy, not to mention such a huge training field. Yi Chen could see that the ground, ceiling, and walls of the training field were covered with many arrays. There were sturdy arrays, uniform arrays, force unloading arrays, and gravity arrays. Without using Jin Yuan and will, it would be extremely difficult to destroy the training field. Of course, body-refining King's strength was also forbidden. Only the most basic physical strength was allowed. What did you say? Rising Sun Sword King Yu Chen wants to compete with this youngster? With so many people present, those who didn't know the truth had already heard the whole story from their friends. Yu Chen is 55 years old this year. He became famous earlier than the Firebird planet's 10 heroes. His rising sun swordsmanship is not only tyrannical, but it is also fast. It is said that it is as fast as light. Perhaps his swordsmanship is not particularly outstanding, but many people who are stronger than him have been killed or defeated by his rising sun swordsmanship. This young man does not seem weak either. Being able to train to the 3rd sky of life and death realm at such a young age, he is undoubtedly a genius. It will not be easy for Yu Chen to beat him. It's hard to say. Some people are talented in cultivation, but their martial arts talent is a level lower. Everyone discussed while sizing up Yu Chen and Yi Chen. Of course, most of them were still paying attention to Yi Chen. After all, Yi Chen was too unfamiliar to them. In the center of the training field, Yu Chen and Yi Chen stood 30 meters apart. One sword. I only need one sword to defeat you. Yu Chen's expression was confident. This kind of confidence stemmed from thousands of victories. If I were you, I wouldn't say that. Yi Chen said indifferently. Uncle Lin, can you tell which one of them has the strongest sword aura? Lan Xin'er could feel that Yu Chen's sword aura was like the morning sun. It seemed calm, but contained boundless explosive power. However, she couldn't tell what Yi Chen's sword aura was. It was faintly discernible and untraceable. Uncle Lin frowned and said, "It's hard to say. This young man seems a little strange." Actually, he was the same as Lan Xin'er. He could tell the strength of Yu Chen's sword, but he couldn't tell the strength of Yi Chen's sword. This was very abnormal. Could it be that he has reached the state of having no sword in his hand and no sword in his heart? Lan Xin'er suddenly thought of a possibility. Once, her sister had talked to her about sword artists. She said that on the Firebird Star, only she and Prince Jinghong had reached the realm of no sword in the hand and sword in the heart. At this realm, the external weaknesses had disappeared, and the sword could be drawn out without any warning. As long as the heart and the sword were there would be nothing they could not do. The next realm was the realm of no sword in the hand and sword in the heart. If the external weaknesses had disappeared and the sword in the heart had disappeared, then the spiritual weaknesses had also disappeared. In addition, in the realm of no sword in the heart, one could control the sword momentum and restrain the sword momentum. When killing, one would not feel the slightest danger. This realm not only had the top qualities of a sword artist, but also the top qualities of an assassin. Before killing, there would not be any spiritual fluctuations. Had Yi Chen reached this realm? Lan Xin didn't believe it. This realm was too unbelievable for her. Even her sister and Prince Jinghong were far from reaching it. Yu Chen, let's begin. Don't disappoint me, Prince Firebird said with his arms crossed. Don't worry. I, Yu Chen, never waste time with my opponent. Rising Sun. As soon as he finished speaking, Yu Chen drew his sword and stabbed at Yi Chen. This sword was so fast that it surpassed the senses of ordinary people. It was as if he was not holding a sword, but a ray of sunlight. Now, this ray of sunlight was shooting at Yi Chen. Rising Sun swordsmanship's first move, Rising Sunday facing Yu Chen's lightning-fast sword, Yi Chen's expression didn't change at all. He unsheathed the great sword on his waist and blocked that ray of sunlight. It was as if he didn't need any time to pull out the sword. Although this kind of speed was not as tyrannical as Yu Chen's Rising Sun swordsmanship, it was more direct and chilling. A metal squeezing sound was heard. The great sword in Yu Chen's hand lost all its light and started to shake violently. In the next second, the sword fell out of Yu Chen's hand as he spurted out a mouthful of blood. His whole body was blown away. If one looked carefully, one would find that his right arm was completely hanging down. The huge training field was completely silent. It wasn't that they didn't think that Yi Chen could beat Yu Chen, but they didn't think that Yi Chen would be able to kill Yu Chen within a second. They knew how powerful Yu Chen was. In the Black Death Secret Realm, he had killed 3 Life and Death Realm Demon Kings all by himself. It should be known that even the most ordinary Life and Death Realm Demon Kings were powerful existences. Among them, almost all of them were powerful, and there were no weaklings. Moreover, Yu Chen himself was a body refining king, so his body's strength was astonishing. Even if chi power was not allowed in this place, it wouldn't hinder him from using his advantage in this aspect. However, what did they see? Yi Chen not only made Yu Chen's sword fall out of his hand, but also made him spurt out blood and fly back. Even his right arm seemed to be temporarily crippled. Too weak. He can't even take 5% of my power. Yi Chen inwardly shook his head. Yu Chen's strength could be ranked in the top 20 among the young generation of the Firebird planet. However, it was still barely satisfactory. In Elysium, without using Jin Yuan, there were a lot of people who could block 5% of his power. Dugu Ju and Snow Sword of Gojosian were the most outstanding among them. Their control of power far surpassed the others. Control of power sounded like nothing much, but Yi Chen, who had truly entered this palace, understood that this was a path that would make people extremely terrifying, almost like gods. The more powerful one's body was, the harder it would be to control it. Therefore, without truly reaching this realm, one's control of power would be unstable. Dugu Ju could explode with astonishing potential in a short period of time after being stimulated. However, after that, only a part of this potential would be left behind, while the other part would be hidden deep within his body. The Snow Sword of Gojosian was the same. After the battle of life and death, Yi Chen had completely entered this palace. The manifestation of this realm was that the will contained within his cells was stronger than others, because he could control the will of these cells. Xu Jing's original body was a golden dragon, and her original body's power was stronger than anyone else's. If she entered this palace, it was possible that her power would increase by dozens of times. Unfortunately, because her original body's power was too great, it would be thousands of times harder for her to reach this realm than others. Yi Chen guessed that humans should be the race that could most easily enter this realm. Without looking at Yu Chen, Yi Chen turned around and left the martial arts field. Since the trouble had been resolved, there was no need for him to stay here and accept everyone's gazes. Yu Chen was about to stand up and continue fighting, but as soon as he stood up, his right arm and chest exploded. Blood filled the air, and his body fell to the ground again. Mr. Firebird was shocked by the scene in front of him. Even after Yi Chen had left the martial arts field, he didn't say anything, nor did he think of stopping him from leaving. This sword technique is too terrifying. It was just a simple sword fight, but it could injure Yi Chen to this extent. If it was a battle of life and death, wouldn't Yi Chen be dead by now? Killing with one strike, this seems to be the trademark of Mr. Jing Hong. How exaggerated. The crowd discussed animatedly, their emotions surging. Terrifying. Uncle Lin took a deep breath, calming his turbulent emotions. Uncle Lin, what's so mysterious about this sword technique? To be honest, this was the first time Lan Xin had seen such a thrilling duel between swordsmen. One strike to determine life and death, without any hesitation. Compared to her sister's sword technique, Yi Chen's sword technique was more direct, without any hesitation. It was also more dangerous. Uncle Lin shook his head and said, "It seems that I have underestimated him. I can't see anything special about this sword technique. All I know is that it contains the power of vibration." He was a little regretful that he had been a little rash before. Offending a swordsman with a bright future was not the right thing to do. Second miss, if you learn sword techniques from him, you might be able to reach the level of eldest miss. However, he felt that there was still a chance to make up for it, and that was to let Lan Xin get close to Yi Chen. Chapter 1033. Lan Xin waited for 4 whole months. On this day, the door to Yi Chen's room was finally opened. Gongzi Yi. Lan Xin welcomed Yi Chen as soon as he appeared in the living room. This time, Uncle Lin did not follow behind him. Miss Xin. Yi Chen nodded with a relaxed look on his face. Lan Xin observed Yi Chen's expression and saw that he seemed to be in a good mood. She thought to herself, did his swordsmanship improve again? How terrifying. But this is great. Asking him for advice now should have a high chance of success. Lan Xin gestured with her hand and said, Gongzi Yi, I've already arranged a seat for you. Sit here. Okay. Lan Xin probably had a favor to ask of him, and it was most likely related to swordsmanship. Yi Chen did not reject her. Kindness must be repaid. She let him board the blue leaf, which was a favor, even though she had accepted a fee. After eating and drinking, Lan Xin looked at Yi Chen with her big blue eyes. Gongzi Yi, I have a presumptuous request. I hope you'll agree to it. Say it. Yi Chen waited for her to continue. I want Gongzi Yi to teach me swordsmanship. Lan Xin went straight to the point. Without changing his expression, Yi Chen said, everyone's swordsmanship has its own style. The profoundness it contains is also different. The fusion points are also very different. I don't dare to teach you, but I can give you some pointers. Before that, let's go to the training field. Show me your swordsmanship. Gongzi Yi agreed. Lan Xin did not expect things to go so smoothly. Let's go. Yi Chen stood up. Okay. Lan Xin quickly stood up and led the way. On the training field, Lan Xin performed the illusion swordsmanship and looked at Yi Chen. Yi Chen asked, what's the name of this swordsmanship? Illusion swordsmanship. Illusion swordsmanship. Nice name. Yi Chen continued, your illusion sword art contains the water profound and the light profound. Using the effect of water, you can make light refract or deflect to cover up the true location of your attack. However, you've been pursuing perfection too much, and you've neglected the practicality. There are some areas that don't need to be changed. If you change too much, it will not only waste your Jin Yuan, but also waste opportunities and reduce your lethality. Yi Chen's eyesight was very sharp. Lan Xin's illusory sword art could easily make people intoxicated, as if they were in a dream. If an ordinary sword artist encountered this sword art, they wouldn't even know how they died. However, ordinary sword artists were still ordinary sword artists. It didn't mean that all sword artists would be bewitched. On the contrary, a truly powerful sword artist would easily defeat Lan Xin by exploiting the flaws of the sword art. In other words, Lan Xin's sword technique could only be used to bully the weak. Against the strong, she would lose very quickly. This was a sword technique that bullied the weak and feared the strong. Then how do we change it? Lan Xin'er asked. Very easy. You and I just need to practice for a while. There were some things that couldn't be conveyed with words. Normally, when a master taught his disciple, there were 2 steps. One was to teach by example, which meant that the master would first speak, and then personally teach. Lan Xin'er nodded. Be careful. Illusory sword ART's first movement, illusory heart. Lan Xin'er's greatsword was a light blue, top-grade greatsword. Its blade was extremely thin, like a blue stream of water. When it sliced through the air, it created circles of light blue ripples. Along with the appearance of the ripples, the position of the sword refracted, making it hard to tell which angle she was going to attack from. Yi Chen didn't use force to break the technique, since that would be meaningless. He took out the demon slaughtering sword and pointed it at the center of the ripples. Splash! It was like the sound of flowing water. The ripples were completely messed up, and so was Lan Xin'er's sword art. In the next second, Yi Chen's sword pierced through the messy ripples, and the tip of the sword was only a hair away from Lan Xin'er's forehead. The flaw of this move is that it isn't focused enough, and it changes too early. Actually, you can deal with changes by not changing. The moment you exchange blows with your opponent, you can create many changes. That way, even if your opponent discovers your flaw, he won't have time to deal with it and will instantly fall into a disadvantageous position. Yi Chen's own sword arts usually turned complicated into simple. This was because of his high level of sword arts, but it didn't mean that Yi Chen didn't know sword arts with many changes. Any set of sword arts actually had many changes, and within the changes, there would be more changes. However, no matter how many changes there were, it was just a process, and the goal was the same, to defeat the opponent. Is that so? Lan Xin'er's ordinary sword pierced over. Yi Chen raised his sword to meet the attack. Ding! The moment the 2 swords clashed, Lan Xin'er's sword art produced countless changes. Ripples spread out, enveloping Yi Chen. Not bad. You seem to have learned it long ago. Yi Chen stretched out his left hand, and 2 of his fingers clamped the tip of his opponent's sword. Lan Xin'er was shocked. Even her sister had to take the changes of this sword seriously, but Yi Chen could easily clamp it. My sister taught me this, but she could only modify the first move. She couldn't modify the second move, because she couldn't connect it with the rest. The illusory sword art only had 2 moves. The first was illusory heart, and the second was illusory dream. If she performed only 1 move, it wouldn't be complete. This was because this illusory sword art was a powerful sword art that Lan Xin'er had obtained from a mysterious mystic realm. It was called illusory heart illusory dream. Due to the high cultivation difficulty of the illusory heart illusory dream, Lan Xin'er had separated it into 2 moves. Although each move only had 1/10 of the essence, at least she could perform it. Don't worry. Your sister couldn't modify the second move because her modification of the first move wasn't thorough enough. The moment she fought with her opponent, her sword art would produce many changes. If her opponent blocked it, she could continue to produce many changes, and she could perform it endlessly. In this way, she would have finished accumulating power. The first move, illusory heart, was actually used to accumulate power for the second move, illusory dream. If she didn't accumulate enough power, she wouldn't be able to perform the second move. This was also why Lan Xin'er didn't use the first move that her sister had taught her, and still used her own first move. After all, only by performing 2 moves in a row would she be able to display the greatest power to deal with a stronger opponent. It was very difficult to produce so many changes in a row. However, it wasn't a problem for Yi Chen. If he used 100% of his power for the first attack, he would use 90% for the second attack, 80% for the third attack, and so on. This way, he could accumulate power and make his opponent tired. Under Yi Chen's guidance, Lan Xin'er finally completed the modification of the first move, illusory heart. She could produce the illusory heart 3 times in a row, although it wasn't perfect. Ding, ding, ding. On the martial arts field, Lan Xin'er stabbed at Yi Chen with her sword. After it was blocked by Yi Chen, ripples spread out, and the dreamy second sword stabbed at Yi Chen's right shoulder. Yi Chen's wrist shook, and the Devil Slayer sword easily blocked the second sword. The ripples continued to spread, and the third sword came, stabbing at the center of Yi Chen's eyebrows. Each sword was faster and more dreamy than the one before. If it was another swordsman whose strength was not as strong as Yi Chen, but who was stronger than Lan Xin, he would have already been defeated. In such a short period of time, it wasn't important whether he could see the floor or not. Illusory dream. The third sword was blocked. The light blue sword in Lan Xin's hand drew a circle. As this circle formed, the light blue ripples that had yet to dissipate silently collapsed, turning into a misty blue rain that completely enveloped Yi Chen. This misty rain was dreamy and illusory. Even if he closed his eyes, he could feel the beauty that didn't exist in this world. It was as if this blue misty rain not only enveloped his body, but also his soul. However, who knew that hidden behind the blue misty rain was a fatal blue sword light? It blended into the misty rain and quietly approached. Kai. The blue misty rain separated, and the sword light collapsed. At the same time, another extremely sharp sword light burst forth, heading straight for Lan Xin's face. Lan Xin was so scared that she took 3 steps back. Yi Chen smiled, put away the Devil Slayer sword, and said, "The first move is almost done. However, to perfect it is not something that can be done in a day. It requires time and effort. Now, let's start with the second move." Yi Chen suddenly felt the blue leaf pause for a moment. "We've arrived at Firebird Planet." Lan Xin closed her eyes. When she opened them, she was a little annoyed. "We've arrived so quickly?" Yi Chen was a little surprised. He and Lan Xin had only stayed in the martial arts field for a dozen days. Adding the 3 months and 4 months before that, they had only been there for a total of 8 months. When the blue leaf began to travel through space, it was 600,000 light-years away from Firebird Planet. Lan Xin explained, "The speed of a heavenly monarch warship is 3 times that of a king warship. In 8 months, it is exactly 600,000 light-years. So that's how it is. May I know the price of a king warship and a heavenly monarch warship?" If he had enough source stones, Yi Chen wanted to buy a heavenly monarch warship. Lan Xin said, "Warships are divided into different sizes. From small to large, they are small warships, medium warships, and large warships. A small king warship costs about 3,000 to 5,000 source stones. A medium king warship costs 10,000 to 15,000 source stones. A large king warship costs 30,000 to 50,000 source stones. As for a heavenly monarch warship, the price is about 50 times that of a king warship. For example, a small heavenly monarch warship costs 150,000 to 200,000 source stones. A medium king warship costs 500,000 to 700,000 source stones. A large king warship costs 1.5 million to 2 million source stones. So expensive. Yi Chen was a little shocked. He naturally knew the value of source stones. It was not an exaggeration to say that 1 source stone was equivalent to tens of thousands of top-quality spirit stones. In this way, a small king warship would cost more than 100 million top-quality spirit stones. A small heavenly monarch warship would cost more than 5 billion top-quality spirit stones. It was an astronomical figure. Moreover, this blue leaf was a medium heavenly monarch warship, and its price was much higher than a small heavenly monarch warship, costing more than 15 billion top-quality spirit stones. That's natural. Above heavenly monarch warship is the Emperor warship. The cheapest small Emperor warship costs more than 30 million source stones. The defensive cover of an Emperor warship can withstand continuous attacks from a 6th-layer heavenly monarch. A peak Emperor warship can even withstand continuous attacks from a 7th-layer life and death king. Chapter 1034. The Firebird star was a large, light red star with a diameter of 27 million kilometers. Such a large star could be clearly seen even from hundreds of millions of kilometers away. The distance between the blue leaf and the Firebird star was only tens of thousands of kilometers. At a glance, the gigantic Firebird star filled one's line of sight. It was boundless. Besides the blue leaf, there were thousands of puppet battleships around it. Most of them were king-class battleships. There were small, medium, and large ones. Of course, There were also many heavenly king battleships. There were at least one or two among the dozens of battleships. As for emperor battleships, there was no need to think about them. The Firebird planet was just a small planet with life, so it was impossible for it to have an emperor battleship. Begin decelerating. In the universe, there was very little resistance and friction. In the atmosphere, the resistance was very high. If they didn't decelerate, the entire blue leaf would burn up. After all, the Firebird planet was different from Elysium. In Elysium, once one's speed reached a certain level, they would directly enter the void. However, the space of the Firebird planet was the space of the universe. It was very stable. No matter how fast one was, it was impossible to enter the void. When one's speed reached a frightening level, the friction would be terrifying. In other words, regardless of whether it was a puppet battleship or a martial artist, they would not be able to increase their speed to the limit within the atmosphere of the Firebird planet. Even 1/10 of their speed would be enough. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Strong air currents assaulted the blue leaf, causing it to sway slightly. However, the blue leaf quickly adapted to the air currents of the Firebird planet and began to stabilize. Lan Xin explained to Yi Chen, the Firebird planet has very little ocean. 90% of the planet is made up of land, and most of the land is unsuitable for human habitation because earthquakes and volcanic eruptions often occur there. Only 30% of the land is suitable for human habitation. This 30% is divided into 3 continents. The largest is the Firebird continent, followed by the Flaming Wind continent, and then the Ironbone continent. My blue leaf family is located in the southeast of the Firebird continent. The Firebird planet seems to have a lot of metal mines. Through the hull of the blue leaf, Yi Chen's soul force radiated outwards. The ground below was filled with mines and miners. Every time a batch of ore was mined, a large puppet carriage would come forward to transport it. Everything was done in an orderly manner. Lan Xin nodded. The Firebird star is a fire element star. Metal mines can be found on more than half of the continent. Every year, we have to transport a large amount of metal to other planets with life. Because of this, although the Firebird star is located at the edge, it is very lively. Tens of thousands of puppet battleships come and go. Most of them are here to buy metals. Of course, many of them are here to buy weapons. The weapon forging industry on the Firebird star is very prosperous. Every city has dozens of weapon forging shops. There are dozens of weapon forging shops in every city. Yi Chen could not help but be shocked. In Elysium, there were very few blacksmiths who could forge weapons. More than 99% of the weapons were passed down from ancient times. Yi Chen did not think that the weapons she was talking about were normal weapons. They were definitely weapons of the artifact level. Dozens of weapon forging shops in a city could not even be described as prosperous. Indeed, weapon forging is the main industry on the Firebird star, and weapon forging is only second to warriors. From low to high, they are low-rank blacksmiths, mid-rank blacksmiths, upper-rank blacksmiths, and the most noble extreme-rank blacksmiths. An extreme-rank blacksmith status is much higher than normal kings. Of course, to become an extreme-rank blacksmith, one has to be at least at the Sea of Souls realm. While the two were talking, the blue leaf began to land. This was a huge city in the southeastern part of the Firebird continent. The walls of the entire city were built with a special kind of stone. The surface of the walls gave off a faint glow, and it seemed to have a pretty good defensive power. In the center of the city was a huge square. Hundreds of puppet warships were parked neatly in the square. This is the battleship parking area of our Blue Leaf family. Since a lot of people use battleships for business, we park them here instead of putting them away. Of course, these are all King-class battleships. Sky King-class battleships would not be left outside casually. The cabin door opened, and a group of people walked down from the Blue Leaf. "Second young miss, you are finally back." In the plaza, a group of people with the blue leaf symbol on their clothes were already waiting. The leader seemed to be a housekeeper, but his cultivation was not low at all. He was at the first sky of life and death realm. Lan Xin said, "Housekeeper Liu, how is my sister now?" "Still unconscious." Housekeeper Liu shook his head. Nodding, Lan Xin said, As long as it doesn't worsen, it's fine. I've already brought back the resurrection fruit. It can definitely cure sister. As she spoke, she turned around and looked at Yi Chen. Mr. Yi? Why don't you stay in my land family for a few days? After I cure my sister, I can take you to tour the Firebird planet. No need. I am used to being alone. In a strange place, it should be interesting to explore alone. All right then. Although she had not spent a lot of time with Yi Chen, Lan Xin'er knew that once Yi Chen made up his mind, he would not change it. Go on with your business. I will take a stroll in this city first. Waving his hand, Yi Chen walked toward the nearest street. Second young miss, who is he? Housekeeper Liu saw that Lan Xin'er seemed to care a lot about Yi Chen, so he asked. Lan Xin'er said, a very powerful sword artist. Let's not talk about this anymore. Take me to see my sister. All right. Before leaving, housekeeper Liu sized up Yi Chen's back. A very powerful sword artist. Young Master Firebird, are you letting him go just like that? A young king beside young Master Firebird said. Then what do you want? Yi Chen did not say anything even though he had suffered a loss once. A swordsman like him would not be a nameless nobody. Maybe he was a genius from another planet. At that time, there would be others to entertain him. As for me, as long as I enter the fourth layer, I will have more or less confidence. There will be no need for me to cause trouble. Young Master Firebird did not want to immediately regain his dignity, nor did he want to rely on his family's power. This was the rule of a life star. In a battle between geniuses, relying on family's power would be a joke. Interesting. Although he had already left, young Master Firebird's voice still reached Yi Chen's ears. This city was called Blue Leaf City, which belonged to the Blue Leaf family. It occupied a vast area, spanning 1,000 li. Just as Lan Xin'er had said, the Firebird planet was indeed a star with a well-developed weapon forging industry. Basically, every main street had a weapon shop that specialized in selling all kinds of weapons. Blue Leaf City had more than 200 weapon shops. Of course, Blue Leaf City was a big city in the Firebird planet. Ordinary cities would have dozens of weapon shops. Arriving at a weapon shop with the Blue Leaf logo, Yi Chen entered. The weapon shop was very spacious, with 5 floors in total. The first floor had the most of the low-grade artifacts, with all kinds of them. Just the low-grade artifacts on the counter alone numbered in the thousands. The second floor had mid-grade artifacts, while the third floor had upper-grade artifacts. The fourth floor had semi-extreme grade artifacts, and according to the staff, the fifth floor had pseudo-extreme grade artifacts and extreme grade artifacts. However, extreme grade artifacts were extremely rare, and most of the time, they were out of stock. Arriving at the fourth floor, Yi Chen checked the prices. The lowest price for a semi-extreme grade artifact is 1,000 extreme grade spirit stones, and the highest is 5,000. It seems very cheap. The fourth floor and below all used extreme grade spirit stones as the unit of measurement. 1,000 extreme grade spirit stones would be equivalent to 5 million upper grade spirit stones. In Elysium, 5 million upper grade spirit stones would not be enough to buy a semi-extreme grade artifact. Compared to upper grade artifacts, the price of a semi-extreme grade artifact would be dozens or even 100 times higher. You're right. Although Elysium is huge, it is still not bigger than the universe. Some of the materials that are rarely seen in Elysium might be very common in the universe. Plus, the weapon forging industry here is too developed, which leads to the weapons being of high quality and low price. On the 5th floor, Chem? The cheapest pseudo-extreme grade artifact costs 10 yuan stones. 10 yuan stones were equivalent to hundreds of thousands of extreme grade spirit stones. The most expensive one is 50. There were dozens of pseudo-extreme grade artifacts, which was not a small amount. Unfortunately, there were only a few extreme grade artifacts, not even one. They had probably all been sold. What is the price of an extreme grade artifact on the Firebird planet? Yi Chen asked the shop assistant on the 5th floor. The shop assistant was very observant. Hearing Yi Chen's question, he immediately knew that he was not from the Firebird planet, so he said, extreme grade artifacts are very rare no matter where you go. Low extreme grade artifacts cost around 200 to 300 yuan stones. Mid-extreme grade ones cost 500 to 700 yuan stones, and high-extreme grade ones cost 1,000 to 1,500 yuan stones. Above that, there are Sky King grade artifacts that cost more than 2,000 yuan stones. In other words, I can buy a mid-extreme grade artifact with the money I paid on the blue leaf. Yi Chen already had a rough idea of the purchasing power of yuan stones. According to Lan Xin, a large king-grade battleship would cost more than 30,000 yuan stones. 10 of them would be 300,000 yuan stones. Even a normal Sky King-grade battleship would cost 150,000 yuan stones. If I want to survive here, this amount of yuan stones is not enough. I have to think of other ways to earn more. Do you buy artifacts here? Yi Chen asked again. Of course. Coming to the counter, Yi Chen took out a pseudo-extreme grade sword and handed it to the shopkeeper. Good sword. It actually contains such a powerful destruction sword intent. The shopkeeper was shocked. How much? Normally, a pseudo-extreme grade artifact's price is between 10 to 50 yuan stones. This sword, I can give you 60 yuan stones. The shopkeeper said with a smile. All right. Yi Chen nodded. He did not really want to sell the sword. He just wanted to see if the sword he had made would be popular here. It seemed like it was not bad at all. Chapter 1035. With 60 source stones in hand, Yi Chen did not leave immediately. After thinking for a while, he pulled out the demon slaughtering sword from his waist. What about this sword? This is a top-quality high-level sword. The shopkeeper's eyesight was very sharp. With one glance, he could tell that this was an extremely rare top-quality high-level sword. Generally speaking, low-level top-quality swords were often sold in weapon shops, and were considered expensive luxury goods. Middle-level top-quality swords would only be sold once every few months, and as for top-quality high-level swords, one might not even be seen in 3 to 5 years. Some weapon shops would open their entire lives without having a top-quality high-level sword for sale. But it's a pity. The shopkeeper suddenly shook his head. What's a pity? Yi Chen asked. The shopkeeper looked at Yi Chen. This sword's most precious material should be the crimson essence, but the person who forged it did not use the crimson essence's power to its limit, and it did not completely fuse with the other materials. I once saw a sword that contained the crimson essence, and that sword felt as if the spirit and flesh were one. This sword is still lacking a little, and correspondingly, that sword's grade was also higher than this one. It was a heavenly king grade sword. So that's how it is. Yi Chen nodded. In the entire Elysium, he was the only one who could forge top-quality swords, and it felt like he was building a car behind closed doors. On the other hand, on Firebird Planet, the weapon forging industry was unprecedentedly developed, and they naturally sought perfection. As if knowing that Yi Chen did not really want to sell this sword, the shopkeeper returned the demon slaughtering sword to Yi Chen and said, although the forging of this sword is lacking a little, the material is not bad, and it contains a powerful destruction sword intent. Its value far surpasses other top-quality high-level swords. I estimate it to be around 2,500 source stones. This was not a low price. Under normal circumstances, top-quality high-level treasures were worth between 1,000 to 1,500, so 2,500 source stones was equivalent to 2 top-quality high-level treasures. Leaving the weapon shop, Yi Chen walked towards the general store. He needed a map of Firebird Planet. Young master, our maps here are divided into many grades. The lowest is a paper map, and the highest is a star-shrinking device. The general store shopkeeper introduced. Star-shrinking device? Let me see. Yi Chen was a little curious. Wait a moment, young master. The shopkeeper walked into the room behind the counter. When he came out, he was holding a crystal ball in his hand. The crystal ball was fixed on a black square block of wood, sparkling and translucent. This is the star-shrinking machine. Yi Chen sensed a mysterious fluctuation from it. That's right. Young master, you can inject a strand of your soul power into it. The shopkeeper said with a smile. All right. After nodding slightly, A strand of soul force emerged from between Yi Chen's eyebrows and silently entered the star-shrinking device. In the next moment, an image appeared in Yi Chen's mind. It was the miniature of a pale red star, exactly the same as the Firebird star. As he concentrated, he discovered that this Firebird star could be enlarged. First, it was the Firebird continent, then the southeast part of the Firebird continent, then Blue Leaf City. Finally, the entire structure of Blue Leaf City was displayed clearly. He could even see the location of the street he was on. What a marvelous technique! Yi Chen sighed. The shopkeeper asked curiously, "What? Is this young master's first time seeing a star-shrinking device?" "That's right. My hometown is in a certain world, not a star with life," Yi Chen explained. "He, indeed. Star-shrinking devices can only be found on stars with life." The shopkeeper smiled, indicating that he understood. "How much is this star-shrinking device?" Yi Chen decided to buy it. The star-shrinking devices of the Firebird star are all 10 yuan stones. It's the same everywhere. Young master can rest assured. It's not that expensive. 10 yuan stones were equivalent to hundreds of thousands of supreme-grade spirit stones. For life and death kings, it was still acceptable, but for Sea of Soul Realm experts, it was too expensive. Here. Handing over 10 yuan stones, Yi Chen put away the star-shrinking device. "Excuse me, do you have any supreme-grade sword forging books or books introducing supreme-grade metals?" After solving the problem of the map, Yi Chen turned his attention to the sword forging art. His sword forging art had many flaws and was not perfect. In fact, the sword forging art he had obtained in Gemstone Islands only touched upon a trace of supreme-grade sword forging art. Being able to forge supreme-grade swords was entirely due to Yi Chen's comprehension of sword Dao and powerful perception. If it were another sword forging genius, it would be difficult to forge a pseudo-supreme-grade sword. Yes, but a lot. Moreover, the price is not cheap. The shopkeeper said. "I'll take as many as you have." Yi Chen's expression became spirited. Soon, the shopkeeper took out a small chest and opened it, revealing jade strips inside. "Young master, these are all top-grade sword forging technique jade strips. After pouring your soul energy into them, the sword forging technique knowledge in the jade strips will enter your mind. After using it once, the jade strips will become useless." The function of jade strips was to prevent knowledge from leaking, just like profound sense martial skills. "How much is one strip?" 1 yuan stone. "Do you mind if I look through a few first?" "Don't worry, I'll pay for the ones I've looked through." "No problem." Taking out a jade strip, Yi Chen poured his soul power inside. Supreme grade fire attribute sword forging art, he took out another one. Supreme grade earth attribute sword forging art. Supreme grade water attribute sword forging art. Supreme grade metal attribute sword forging art. Supreme grade Chen Yang sword forging art. Supreme grade extreme yin sword forging art. After reading through 7 or 8 jade scrolls in one breath, Yi Chen had a feeling of being enlightened. The sword forging knowledge inside was not very detailed. It was just the basics, and some parts were even unclear. If it were a normal top-rank sword forger, they would be completely lost. However, Yi Chen's understanding of the sword Dao had already reached an unimaginable level. Even the tiniest bit of extreme rank sword forging knowledge would be able to gradually improve him. Therefore, this extreme rank sword forging knowledge was undoubtedly a priceless treasure for him. "All right, I'll take them all." A total of 24 yuan stones. The shopkeeper's face was full of smiles. To be honest, these top-grade sword forging technique jade strips weren't some kind of secret that couldn't be passed on to others. They were merely the most basic knowledge. If one thought that buying a top-grade sword forging technique jade strip would allow one to forge a top-grade treasured sword, that would be the ravings of a fool. It was like giving a peerless secret cultivation technique. Without the guidance of a master, one wouldn't know how to cultivate. Everything had to be supported by the details. True supreme-grade sword forging art wasn't for sale. Those famous sword forging masters wouldn't pass down their secret sword forging art to others. Even when they taught their disciples, they would only pass down a bit of it from time to time. Unless the disciple was their direct disciple, the majority of the disciples wouldn't be able to learn it. Naturally, the shopkeeper was happy to sell a set of supreme-grade sword forging art. Gongzi, you've taken care of quite a lot of my business this time. I'll give you this set of books introducing metal materials. The shopkeeper took out a huge box and placed it in front of Yi Chen. Supreme-grade metal material introduction. Supreme-grade metal material introduction. Supreme-grade metal material introduction. Just like the supreme-grade sword forging art, the books on supreme-grade metal material introduction were categorized into different categories. Many thanks. Yi Chen accepted it without hesitation. Compared to the other items he had bought, these books weren't worth much. Otherwise, the shopkeeper wouldn't be so generous as to give him a set. In the blink of an eye, a week had passed. Yi Chen had not only digested the knowledge of 24 supreme-grade sword forging art, but he had also finished reading all the books introducing metal materials. It's time to purchase some supreme-grade sword forging art. Forging swords could strengthen Yi Chen's foundation. The reason why Yi Chen's sword Dao could advance by leaps and bounds was due to the countless swords he had forged. There were many things that one could comprehend by analogy, and the same went for sword forging. After all, it wasn't easy to comprehend martial arts and profoundness. By the end of the day, Yi Chen had purchased a large amount of supreme-grade sword forging art. Just the most common star iron alone cost Yi Chen tens of millions of jin. Of course, although it looked heavy, it was only the size of a small fake mountain. Supreme-grade sword forging art was extremely mysterious. Although it didn't look big, a piece of metal the size of a fist weighed thousands of jin. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to forge a supreme-grade sword forging art that could change its size at will. It's a pity that I don't have enough primal stones. Yi Chen had spent more than half of the primal stones he had. Fortunately, the supreme-grade sword forging art was enough for him to forge hundreds of supreme-grade sword forging art. Even if they were all inferior supreme-grade sword forging art, they would still be worth 200,000 to 300,000 primal stones. However, Yi Chen knew that this was only in theory. With Yi Chen's current experience of forging one supreme-grade sword forging art, it would be good if he had a 10% success rate. If it was someone else, they probably wouldn't even have a 1% success rate. No matter what they did, they would have to pay the tuition fee first. This was also the reason why there were very few solitary supreme-grade sword forgers. Out of 100, there would only be 1 or 2. Most of the supreme-grade sword forgers had the support of superfamilies and sects. Normal families and sects wouldn't have so many primal stones to spend. The price of raising a supreme-grade sword forger was very shocking. Without primal stones, even if you were a peerless genius, you would still have to stand aside. Correspondingly, on the Firebird planet, those with supreme-grade sword forging art would have a very prestigious status, much higher than normal kings. Many powerful kings would fight to send gifts to them, begging them to forge supreme-grade sword forging art. Looks like I should sell the 10 Demons battleships. I can't use them anyway. The Demons battleships were very valuable, and it would be too wasteful to keep them. Once they were used, the upper echelons of the Demons might notice them. Maybe I can sell them to her. Yi Chen thought of Lan Xina. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.